This story is completely crazy. He bought a gold ring for 10 yuan. In a world where food is the only strong currency, that ring transported him to a zombie apocalypse with 2 buckets of tomatoes. Yes, that's right, tomatoes. In this world, he realized that tomatoes were worth more than gold. Now, together with 2 sisters, he must turn this wealth into strength to survive in this chaotic world. Amid the storm and the city's destruction, monsters roam the streets. Soon after, a young man wakes up tied up in an unknown place, where a woman asks him what his name is. Suddenly, the sound of a belt snapping makes his eyes widen. Then the woman stretches out the object and questions him about why he invaded their base. Still immobilized, the young man replies that his name is Song Chao, and that he was just passing through the area. However, not believing him, the woman tells him to stop stalling and save both of their time. She then points to a girl eating tomatoes and asks why he would carry something so precious with monsters everywhere. At that moment, the other girl spits out what she was eating and asks if he injected anesthetic or something similar into the tomatoes. Right after the question, the girl starts coughing non-stop while the other 2 just watch the scene. As soon as she recovers, she tells her sister Shen Jiao that she already tested the tomatoes and they only have pesticide residue. That the woman, now called Shen Jiao, just places her hand on her forehead at her sister's comment. Taking advantage of the distraction, the boy asks if the 2 sisters could please untie him first. In response, he only receives a whip strike. Next, Shen Jiao leans over him and warns that after falling into the hands of the dude from West City, he shouldn't try any more tricks. Finally, she stares at him and tells him not to think that a pretty face will stop him from being attacked, before demanding that he tell the truth. From the corner of his eye, Song Chao observes the woman's reaction. Immediately, Shen Jiao grabs him by the collar and yells, asking where the tomatoes came from and if there were more. Upon hearing the question, he just realizes that he has truly traveled to an apocalyptic place. At that moment, the young man remembers how dangerous and cautious he had to be while traveling alone, finding the tomatoes next to a creature and almost being killed by another before being saved. Suddenly, his body is thrown to the ground once again. Then Shen Jiao accuses him of plotting something and demands that he tell the truth. Without giving him time to answer, she threatens him if he doesn't quickly say what he knows. Desperate, he begs the woman to stop being rough and assures her that he wasn't sent by anyone. Hearing this, the girl simply lets him go, making him fall. On the ground, he explains that he came from another base to trade, and that he can offer more tomatoes if they help him. Faced with the offer, Shen Jiao is surprised at the possibility that he might have more. Then the woman questions what kind of trade he planned to make and if, by any chance, he was a slave trader. Thus, the 2 stare at each other in silence for a moment. Suddenly, the other complains that the tomatoes are too sour and asks if he has anything else. Right after, she ends up demanding that he also get vegetables and eggs. At once, Shen Jiao tells her foolish sister to calm down and asks where it would be possible to find eggs in this world. She then explains that chickens have mutated and that their eggs are no longer edible. With this revelation, Song Chao realizes that even basic items like vegetables and eggs have become rare commodities, concluding that it was already too late for that place. Now free, the young man gestures and asks what kind of goods he can trade for food. Meanwhile, he reflects on having arrived there because of a strange ring and decides he needs to make a profit to help his family. With that, Shen Jiao starts listing the items they have available for trade. During the negotiation, the woman offers energy modules, laser weapons, and even beautiful women as slaves. However, the mere mention of buying women leaves the young man completely shocked. In his mind, he begins to imagine the possibility of trading eggs and tomatoes for beautiful women. Immediately, Shen Jiao grabs him again and accuses him of being interested in slave trafficking. However, he denies everything and says it was a misunderstanding, as he wanted to trade for gold and diamonds. She just watches him with a suspicious look. Then the woman asks why you would even need items like those. Shen Jiao points outside and says that such things haven't had any value for a long time. Right after, she stares at him intensely and demands to know who he really is. Caught off guard, Song Chao hesitates, unsure of how to respond. Then he changes tactics and explains that in his base food is abundant, so everyone values items to please women. Finally, he proposes that they make transactions so both sides can get what they need, whether food or jewelry. Faced with the proposal, Shen Jiao questions how the trade would work, and if he could supply tomatoes regularly despite the radiation. With a smile, the young man assures her that his base has so much food he can come every few days as long as they accommodate him. The 2 sisters immediately react to his choice of words, with the older one warning they don't provide special services. He then clears up the misunderstanding and stresses that he just needs his personal safety guaranteed when he arrives. The 2 exchange glances for a moment, considering the offer. Then the older sister agrees to the deal but warns that they need to make the price very clear. Pointing to the buckets, Shen Jiao sets the rate. 1 tomato can be traded for 10 kilos of gold or items of similar value. Without hesitation, he agrees to the terms and says that to start the partnership, those tomatoes are theirs. To seal the deal, the woman takes one of the tomatoes as provisions and eats it right after. While eating, Shen Jiao comments that she hasn't had something so clean in years. With that, the young man says that now that the negotiations are over, he would like to say goodbye. Before he can finish the sentence, his head is slammed against the wall and the woman tells him he can move around freely. Then she clarifies that leaving the factory or being out of her sight is not an option. Right after, she explains that the mutant beasts in the area have been contained but not completely. Thus, the woman warns him not to blame her if he decides to wander off and ends up meeting his end. Unfazed, he asks if he can look for a bathroom. With a red face, she shouts that it's fine and he can go. Upon leaving the warehouse, the young man celebrates finally escaping that place. Soon after, he stops and reflects that there must be a reason for everything that happened that day. The answer comes when he remembers that the ring on his finger was the cause of his travel between dimensions. Then he recalls buying the ring at his stall and thinking it wasn't anything special. Curious, he decides to spin the stone on the ring to see what might happen. Immediately, the object emits an intense glow that engulfs him completely. Then a bright light transports him to another place as he watches in shock. In the middle of an energy portal, his body was pulled into a vortex. Soon after, he reappeared in a new place as the surrounding energy dissipated. Looking around, Song Chao realized he had returned to a familiar field and announced that he was back. At that moment, he remembered the seller saying he had a bright future, and that the celestial ring would be sold only to him. Finally, the man had offered a discount and gave him the ring for just 199 yen. The young man just kept wondering who that old man really was. One last memory of the old man being chased by the police surfaced in his mind. With that, he stopped for a moment to process all the information. Faced with the situation, Song Chao scratched his head and decided he needed to find the old man to ask him questions. Suddenly, a voice called his name and told him to stop where he was. Immediately, a woman confronted him, demanding to know when he would pay the 10,000 yen his family owed. Not knowing what to say, the young man just tried to come up with an excuse. Soon after, the woman explained that she needed the money because her son would be going to college soon. Clasping his hands, he begged Aunt Jean for a few more days to pay the debt as soon as he had the money. At that moment, he remembered borrowing the amount to treat his sick parents. The hope of getting gold from that other world to fix everything was his only motivation. While he tried to justify himself, the woman complained that he had promised to pay years ago and always found excuses. Desperate, he promised to pay the debt within 3 days with interest, but she only sneered and said his parents would be better off dead. Upon hearing such words, his eyes glowed red as she continued insulting him. In a quick move, Song Chao almost struck her and threatened to kill her if she said one more word about his family. The woman just stared at him, completely frightened by his reaction. With his fist against the wall, he assured her he would pay the money the next day with interest so she wouldn't worry. Soon after, he told her to leave immediately, while she watched him in shock at his behavior. Still shaken, the woman accused him of scaring her and threatened to find someone to force him to pay if he didn't keep his promise. He just watched her leave in silence. With his fist clenched, he decided he should take this opportunity to give his family a better life. The next day, outside the market, the young man prepared 2 buckets full of fresh vegetables. After placing the buckets next to a box, he confirmed everything was ready to go. With everything prepared, he spun the stone on his ring to activate the portal. Right after, a large vortex of energy opened before him, ready to transport him to the other world. As soon as he arrived, he confirmed that the return point hadn't changed, but then the barrel of a gun appeared at his side. In an instant, the weapon was pressed against his forehead. Right after, a female voice welcomed him while her finger tightened on the trigger. Then Shinjiao asked why he had taken so long to return. With a smile on her face, she questioned his sudden disappearance the day before. Nervous, the young man tried to calm down and explain that he had just gone back to get some food. Then he turned and asked if they didn't want vegetables and eggs, saying that he claimed he would show them what he had brought. At that moment, when he looked at his hands, he saw there was nothing there and became confused. Soon after, the younger sister called Shinjiao to come see what had appeared. On the ground, 2 buckets full of fresh vegetables and a box of eggs had appeared out of nowhere. Seeing that, the older woman just stared at the items, unable to hide her surprise. Immediately, with her mouth watering, she swallowed hard at the sight of the food. Then Shinjiao ordered him to go cook, and he agreed right away. Shortly after, the young man was preparing the food while the 2 sisters eagerly ate the fresh vegetables. While the younger sister celebrated finally eating fresh greens, the older one asked if he was hiding the food nearby. She then explained that as far as she knew, there was nothing around but zombies and mutant beasts within a 10-kilometer radius of the base. With a suspicious look, she pressed him to say where on earth he had gotten that food. In the end, Song Chao replied that he always took enough food with him when he left and told her not to worry about the rest. Right after, he changed the subject and asked if there was a safe nearby so they could start working together. Even so, the woman explained that they were in the residential suburbs and that even if there was a safe, they wouldn't have the equipment to open it. Hearing this, the young man just grimaced. Indignant, he accused her of being a fraud since there was no safe to get the gold she had promised in exchange for the tomatoes. With a smile, Shinjiao winked and said that while there was no safe here, what he sought was probably in the nearby villages. Then she hurried him to get going, but the woman questioned his rush since she had just filled her stomach. Determined, the young man insisted that he was in a hurry and they needed to go quickly. At last, she stared at him for a moment before making a decision. Then, with a gesture, she agreed to go out for some post-dinner exercise. Right after, she instructed her sister Jaime to stay and guard the base against any intruders. To finish, she gave the final order to shoot to kill if anyone appeared. As they left, Song Chao asked if she would be fine on her own without her sister, but Shen Jiao just said he was still there. Then the woman reassured him, saying they had already swept the area for mutants many times. As they passed through the door, she informed him that when they arrived, he could take everything he found. While getting ready to leave, Song Chao introduced himself as just an ordinary guy who had traveled to the future and was a bit panicked. A little earlier, Shen Jiao had thrown a watch at him, ordering him to put it on. With the object in his hand, the young man asked if it was just a toy. Right after, he inspected the device and wanted to know how it worked. Surprised, the woman stared at him upon realizing he didn't know how to use the device. So he explained that he wasn't a fighter and had never even seen the monsters she mentioned. Hearing this, Shen Jiao sighed and revealed that it was a soldier's multifunctional watch. Then she began to explain that the watch could track his location. The device was also capable of detecting environmental radiation. The demonstration ended when his helmet activated, showing the function to contact teammates. Without wasting time, she grabbed him by the shirt and told him to move out immediately. While guiding him to a motorcycle, the woman commented that he could study the watch during the trip. The sight of the wheel-less motorcycle made him react with astonishment. Once on the vehicle, Shen Jiao directly asked if he was from that world or not. Then she questioned how he didn't know what a maglev was as she prepared to depart. With the visor activated, the soldier just glanced back at him for a moment. Caught off guard, he stammered and swore he was from that world. However, she just stared at him through the visor, unconvinced. Not caring much, she just told him to hold on tight. With a strong boost, the bike took off and sped quickly through the air. Startled by the sudden takeoff, the young man clung to her tightly to avoid falling off the moving vehicle. Annoyed by the contact, she yelled at him to let go immediately. Still, he stayed clinging to her the whole ride. Because of that, the woman threatened to cut off his hand if he moved it. After a while in the air, he commented on how silent the place was. While they crossed a field, he asked again, and she reminded him they had already cleared the area. She explained there was nothing there except zombies and mutant beasts. Right after, a creature leaped from the grass toward them, proving the place only stayed quiet after a slaughter. Frightened by the surprise attack, the young man shouted for her to be careful. Without hesitation, Shen Jiao drew her weapon and aimed at the approaching creature. With a smile, she told him to relax because Auntie's here. As they moved away, she said not to make a fuss as it was just a rat, leaving the destroyed body behind. Curious, he asked if the weapon was for sale and how much food it would cost. She simply replied that the laser weapon wasn't worth anything. Then she said he could get one for just an egg once they reached Linjiang base, while the futuristic city rose on the horizon. The idea of trading an egg for a weapon left him thoughtful for a moment. As they flew over a luxury condo, Song Chao reflected that in that apocalyptic world, one had to be armed to the teeth. Upon landing in front of a fountain, Shen Jiao announced they had arrived at the place. Soon after, the two approached a large mansion. Then the woman pulled out 2 pistols and loaded them. She told him to stay close to her and not wander off, and he immediately agreed. When they reached the door, she said it had been a while since she was last in that area. Then she warned that the exploration might be a bit troublesome before entering the house. Peeking through the gap, the young man reacted with surprise at what he saw. The living room, though luxurious, was completely ransacked and covered in bloodstains. He just swallowed hard at that sight. Even with the mess, he noticed that even the couch would be worth a lot, but his partner urged him to hurry before nightfall. Climbing the stairs, the woman instructed them to go straight to the master bedroom. Once inside, she explained that valuables were usually kept there. After a quick glance, Song Chao commented that it didn't look like much and suggested they leave. Suddenly, Shen Jiao stomped hard on the floor, startling him with a noise. Right after, he was astonished by what he saw. A secret door with a safe was revealed, and the young man asked how she knew it was there. With a distant look, she explained that her former home had been even more luxurious, so she was used to hideouts like that. Then she helped him shoot the safe's lock. With the door open, the two stepped inside and found a miniature golden ship. Seeing the treasure, the young man celebrated finally finding what he was looking for. Faced with so much gold in boxes, he realized he would get rich this time. Shen Jiao then suggested he check if he wanted anything else before going to the next place. With his eyes shining, Song Chao held the solid gold ship and exclaimed that it was exactly what he wanted. Suddenly, his eyes were drawn to something else inside the safe. In one of the drawers, he found a lone ring. He picked up the object, thinking that something hidden so well in a secure room had to be valuable. After examining the ring closely, he decided to keep it for now. With the golden ship in hand, he said he was ready and they could leave. Suddenly, a noise outside made the young man widen his eyes. As soon as he asked what was happening, Shen Jiao told him to be quiet and warned she had heard something. Not understanding what was happening, Song Chio just watched the scene. Meanwhile, Shen Jiao went to the window to see what was outside. Suddenly, her watch started beeping, and she wondered if it was them. Seeing her reaction, the young man wanted to know what was going on and if it was a friend. The woman explained that they weren't friends, but rather a group from the southern suburbs who had tried to sell them as slaves several times. She then revealed that the group was being attacked by a swarm of mutant wasps. With a smile, Shen Jiao simply commented that they deserved what was happening to them. Right after, Song Chio's watch also beeped, showing a hologram of the mutant wasp. Given the situation, the woman figured this was the perfect chance to get rid of them once and for all. With that in mind, she decided they needed to jump out the window before being seen. Without hesitation, Shen Jiao leaped while Song Chao only watched from inside. The woman landed safely on the ground. Right after, he also jumped but fell clumsily, making her comment on his terrible physical shape. She then asked if it was possible that he had never been injected with genetic enhancers. While running, he asked if there was a way to buy them, and Shen Jiao replied that one cost about 30 eggs. Hurrying him, she told him not to talk and just run, while clearing a path with gunfire through the wreckage. Soon after, one of the men from the other group shouted for them to stop and help. Without hesitation, the woman shot at them and replied she wouldn't help at all. Then she handed a weapon to Song Chao and ordered him to help shoot. With the gun in his hands, the young man froze, not knowing what to do. As the bullets whizzed past them, Shen Jiao insisted that he hold the weapon and help her. As soon as he took the gun, the young man just stared at it, unsure of what to do. Right after, he admitted he didn't know how to use that kind of weapon. Upon hearing that, the woman just clicked her tongue in disapproval. Because of this, she complained about her bad luck in accepting his job while her watch beeped. Suddenly, 2 grenades materialized in her hand. Not understanding, the young man asked what those objects were. Right away, his partner explained that they were flash and smoke grenades. Then she threw them and warned him not to forget to bring food to reimburse the items. Soon after, the enemy just screamed in confusion as the artifacts exploded. Amid the smoke, the woman yelled for him to run, but the enemy spotted them. At that moment, the man fired in their direction and cursed at them, not to try to escape. Although an energy shield activated to block the shot, it ended up breaking on impact and hit her directly. Seeing the scene, Song Chao shouted her name, Shen Jiao. Even wounded in the shoulder, the fighter just glared at him with one eye closed. As blood ran down her shoulder, he shouted her name again. Worried, the young man asked if she was okay, but his partner assured him it was nothing and told him to keep running. Then she ducked to dodge the bullets coming her way. Meanwhile, the enemy kept shooting at the mutant wasps that were chasing them. In the meantime, the two ran down the street as the creatures fired energy projectiles. With her gun in hand, Shen Jiao began shooting back. Soon after, she prepared for direct combat. At that moment, the woman leaped toward the motorcycle that appeared floating in the air. Already at the controls, she reached out her hand to him and shouted for him to grab it. Without hesitation, the young man gripped her hand tightly. Seeing their escape, the enemy yelled at them not to dare run away. Finally, now on the bike, the pursuer shouted her name one more time as they sped off at high speed. While the younger sister just grumbled about the situation, Shen Jiao tended to her wound as Song Chao apologized and promised not to back down next time. With her hair now tied up, the warrior advised him to practice shooting as she couldn't count on his fighting skills. Then she used a medical injector that instantly sealed the wound on her arm. Surprised by the medicine's effectiveness, the young man realized he needed to prepare food to trade for the drug as soon as possible. Suddenly, he said goodbye, saying he had something to do and would see them next time. At that moment, Shen Jiao asked if he was sure he wanted to leave since the enemies could return at any minute. Even with his back turned, he insisted he couldn't stay and really needed to go back now. Seeing his insistence, the woman just told him to go while he promised to bring more food as compensation. Right after walking away, Song Chao looked around to make sure he was alone in the warehouse. With the place secure, an energy enveloped him and he vanished completely. Soon after, the younger sister peeked from behind a pillar and confirmed he had left. Then Shen Jiao picked up her destroyed armor and cursed the bastards from the south for the damage. With a look of disappointment, she realized she could no longer use that outfit. When asked what it was, the fighter tapped her communicator and reported that he had completely disappeared. Back at the base, the veteran called her sister Shen Jiao on the communicator to have her return. With the damaged jacket in her hands, she simply found the situation interesting. Right after, the woman reflected that the young man really had something special. Faced with everything, she sat down and began thinking about what to do next. Meanwhile, far away, Song Chao looked at the golden ship and celebrated finally being able to improve life back home. As soon as he returned to his own time, he went to a shop on a sunny afternoon. Inside the store, a blonde woman watched him with a suspicious expression. Sitting in front of the counter, the young man just pondered how he would sell the gold. After a while, the saleswoman approached and asked if she could help him since he had been there for over an hour. With a smile, he explained that he had a gold art piece to sell and asked if they accepted it. The woman confirmed they bought gold, but only with a receipt as they didn't accept items from unknown sources. Awkwardly, he just said he would look somewhere else first and said goodbye. Already outside, Song Chao told himself he needed to sell that gold no matter what. Soon after, he was seen running from a shop while being accused of stealing the item. An hour later, the young man was kicked out of another place but remained determined to find a buyer someday. Later, he refused to sell it for 100 at a pawn shop, demanding at least 300 for the gold. By night, he sat on a bench completely discouraged from failing to sell the item anywhere. With that, he realized he had never imagined how hard it would be to sell the gold he had in his hands. Suddenly, a man stopped in front of him and asked how many pieces he was selling. Surprised by the approach, the young man just looked up, unsure what to say. Before him stood an old man with a hat who watched him, waiting for an answer. At that moment, the man smiled and invited him to go to his shop with the goods. As they walked down a dark, empty street under the moonlight, the two moved side by side. Soon after, the man invited him into his antique shop. With a gesture, the old gentleman welcomed him to his no-questions-asked antique store. Sitting in his chair, he introduced himself as the manager, Joe Fuyuan. From there, he asked the young man to show him the pieces he was selling. A bit awkward, Song Chao simply agreed to the request. Right after, he revealed the large golden sailing ship that shone brilliantly. At that moment, he explained it was a work of art in perfect condition, sold at the price of ordinary gold, which left the manager impressed. With a magnifying glass, the elder examined the piece up close and remarked that it was incredible. After the inspection, Zhao Fuyuan confirmed it was genuine gold with excellent craftsmanship and prepared to make an offer. He then assured him he was a fair businessman and followed the general price of gold and art, while the young man listened closely. After weighing the piece, the manager offered the market value as a friendly deal between them. As a notification popped up on the young man's phone, the merchant advised him to bring any other treasure there first. Seeing the amount of 740,000 yen on the screen, the young man realized he was finally rich. With the phone in hand, Song Chao celebrated at last getting the money. As soon as he arrived, Song Chao knocked on Aunt Zheng's door to settle the account. Suspicious, the woman peered through the crack and asked who it was before opening the door. For a moment, her gaze stayed fixed. With his phone in hand, the young man announced he was there to pay the debt via transfer. Even without understanding, Aunt Zheng told him to come in and said to settle the payment directly with her son. Then the woman called for Zhang Jun to come receive the money. Soon the young man appeared, asking if, after all that time, the debt would finally be paid. The visitor then confirmed he would make the transfer on his phone. With that, he opened the payment app so the transaction could be completed. While looking at the phone, Zhang Jun insulted him, calling him a lazy hick and saying his family was useless. The young man's expression changed completely upon hearing the insult. He immediately stated that the 10,000 debt was paid with 2,000 in interest, because a man should be grateful and have manners. He then warned that he would make Zhang Jun regret it if he said one more word about his family. The threat left mother and son completely terrified. The boy pointed and shouted about the threat, but the others simply asked whether it really was one. With an intimidating look, he asked if Zhang Jun truly wanted to test him. His opponent's reaction was pure shock before Song Chao finally left at dusk. Later that night, the debt was finally paid. Lying in his bed, the young man began planning to buy a new bed for his parents and maybe even a house. Soon his thoughts turned to what might have happened to the sisters in the other world. Looking at the ring on his finger, he decided it might be better to check on them later. The next day, Song Chao returned to the warehouse in the other world. With his backpack on his shoulders, he walked through the place. Right after, he opened the door with a smile and announced that he was back. At that very moment, a gun was pressed against his head. It was Shen Zhouan asking if it was really him, while Shen Jiamei watched just behind her. With his hands up, the young man asked her not to shoot and confirmed his identity. The veteran lowered her weapon and wanted to know what he was doing there again. The young man tried to find out whether the group from the day before had returned, but she cut him off, saying it was none of his business. Faced with that, the woman asked why he'd come back after running away, and he explained he had promised to find his sister. Intrigued, Shen Zhouan suggested he bring that sister to the shelter. A bit embarrassed, Song Chao made up that she was a little unwell at the moment. Suspicious, the woman stepped closer to ask whether his sister was a mutant. He quickly confirmed and added that she was very aggressive and trusted no one. The explanation didn't seem to convince the two sisters, who just watched him in silence. To change the subject, the visitor opened his backpack and offered bacon and sausages he had brought. After everyone ate, the table was covered with empty plates and bowls. With a satisfied sigh, Shen Jiamei showed how much she had enjoyed the meal. She soon commented that she was full and content, as she hadn't eaten that well in a long time. Next, the younger one suggested that her older sister marry Song Chao, so they would never have to worry about their last meal again. At the boldness, Shen Zhouan gave her a thump on the head for the suggestion. She then scolded the girl and told her not to try to sell her to anyone. Watching the scene, the young man seemed to remember something important. Then the woman explained they would need to go to Linjing base the next day to pick up supplies and invited him to come along. His answer was an immediate and enthusiastic yes. Turning to the leader, he confirmed he would definitely go with them on the mission. The young man then listed that he also had many things to buy, such as genetic enhancement, fluid, and combat suits. Hearing his plan to get 10 of each, Shen Zhouan asked if he would be able to carry that much weight. Right away, she warned that Linjing's genetic enhancer was low grade, and that taking it more than once wouldn't help. Song Chao explained he was buying for some friends and asked what time they would depart. After thinking, the warriors said they would leave at 10 o'clock, but that he would need to bring more food to have enough money. With a thumbs up, the young man assured them not to worry, since he would bring more than enough food. The next morning, the group prepared to head out through the abandoned city. With a thud, Song Chao dropped 2 heavy suitcases onto the warehouse floor. Standing beside his surprised Shen Jian, he declared that it was enough for the trip. As soon as they opened the cases, the sisters were astonished to see fruits, vegetables, eggs, and even meat. The young man then explained that he would leave 2 suitcases as payment and use the rest for shopping, earning their agreement. With a big smile, he said he was really excited for this. At that moment, Shen Jiamai poked her sister again, suggesting she just marry him already. Embarrassed, the older sister told the girl to stop talking and get in the vehicle so they could leave. Right after, the yellow vehicle took off at high speed and departed on the mission. While traveling, the young man seemed a bit confused by the landscape. His surprise grew when they spotted gigantic walls on the horizon. He then asked the younger one if that was a military base behind the walls. With shining eyes, the girl simply confirmed it was. Then Shen Jiamai explained that it was Linjiang military base, a human fortress with 3 walls and defenses no mutant dared to cross. Upon arriving at the base entrance, the group joined others who were also waiting to enter. Meanwhile, one of the armed guards instructed everyone in line to stay orderly and present their cards. Soon the entry gate opened so they could move forward. While waiting, Song Chao asked how much food was needed to get digital currency, and Shen Jian explained the exchange rate. Then the woman brought her arm to the sensor to validate entry. At that moment, one of the guards teased her, asking if the West Side twins were raising men now. With a look of disdain, she told him to shut up and just do his job. The soldier only responded with a mocking chuckle. With their entry cleared, the main gate opened along with a welcome greeting to Linjiang base. The young man was completely amazed by the sight before him. The inner city revealed itself as a futuristic place full of neon lights and advanced technology. The streets of that fortress in the post-apocalyptic world were bustling with life. All around, people in different outfits and appearances wandered about. Seeing the movement, the young man asked if it was safe now that their weapons had been handed over, but Shen Jian reassured him. However, his expression changed when he noticed a less glamorous side of the city. In a dark corner, he saw 2 thin, sickly-looking men sitting on the ground. One of them looked his way with a face completely devoid of hope. Watching the scene, Song Chao realized the harsh reality of that ruined world. Suddenly, a man began shouting in the middle of the street, drawing everyone's attention. He loudly announced that he had a beautiful woman freshly brought from the south. With a tired look, the woman just listened in silence as the offer was made for 10 electronic coins. Hearing the price, Song Chao was shocked to realize that was worth only 5 eggs. At that moment, Shen Jian's voice came from his side, asking if he was tempted by the offer. Then she advised him to mind his own business and stay out of it. Quickly, the young man denied it, saying he couldn't waste food on that and they should hurry to make the exchange. With that, Shen Jian agreed and explained that people there would do anything for food. She also added they could even steal everything he had during the night. Soon after, the woman stopped walking and pointed out they had reached their destination. The group then headed to a building marked as the Currency Bureau. Before going in, she instructed Song Chao to remain silent and act indifferent. According to her advice, that behavior would prevent him from being looked down on inside. As soon as they entered, 2 uniformed men watched them approach the counter. One of them asked Shen Jian if she had anything good to sell. In response, the woman placed a large suitcase on the counter and said it was just that. The man looked surprised and wanted to know what was inside the case. With a slight smile, Shen Jian ordered him to exchange all its contents for digital currency. As soon as the suitcase was opened, the attendant asked in disbelief if she was really going to trade all that. But his partner repeated the question, shocked at the huge amount of eggs inside. Soon, the older man shouted as he noticed there were also fresh vegetables among the items. The sight of nearly 3 kilos of fresh meat left everyone at the place astonished. Even the others waiting in line reacted in shock at the news of food. With that, the attendant gripped the counter and demanded to know where on earth they had gotten it. Then his colleague whispered to be careful, as they might be royalty from a large base. Hearing that, the man agreed to make the trade immediately, while young Shen Jian urged him to hurry. She then warned him not to try anything funny, as she would be watching his every move. Soon after, Shen Jiami cheered excitedly at receiving 470 points for the trade. The girl then shouted they were going shopping, while her sister and Song Chao watched with a smile. At that moment, the young man said she could buy whatever she wanted on his tab, not noticing someone was spying on them from afar. Hidden in an alley, the man concluded they were a good target, and that he needed to inform Tiger. In a bar, the informant told his boss Tiger that a fat sheep was in town and had exchanged over 400 credits. While smoking, the gang leader commented that it was an impressive amount. The man then detailed that the trade included eggs, fruit, and 3 kilos of pork, which made Tiger skeptical. But the informant swore he was absolutely sure about the information. The gang boss then realized that was an extremely rare product in the region. With 2 women at his side, the criminal asked how many people made up the potential target. The answer was that there were only 3 people, 1 man and 2 women, who were still in Market 1. With the cigar between his fingers, the leader called over one of his men old sticks. Then the order was for his men to watch the road leading to the Western District. Tiger then reflected that these days, anyone who could afford pork was very rich. The success of that plan meant he would get even richer. Meanwhile, Shenjuan asked if Song Chao was sure he wanted to go to the market. The young man replied that she wasn't the only one who had things to buy there. With that, the woman agreed and suggested they split up and meet again when finished shopping. The young man's first stop was a store displaying several models of weapons in its showcase. To Song Chao's surprise, Shen Jiamei decided at the last second to follow him into the weapons shop. Soon after, an automated interface projected a welcome message from the device on his wrist. The holographic projection of the interface left him speechless for a moment. Then the system welcomed him to the Linjiang-based market while displaying the available purchase options. Upon entering, Song Chao was impressed by a giant combat robot on display in the shop. He quickly realized that this market was truly full of every kind of equipment. With that, he let out a nervous laugh. Soon after, the two sisters left him alone to do their own shopping, leaving him completely overwhelmed. Annoyed, he complained that they didn't even accompany their customer and that he would leave a bad review. While interacting with the holographic panel, the young man lamented that they could at least have told him where to go. The system then displayed the specifications of an automatic pistol and a hologram. His eyes widened as he had an idea, so he decided he needed to arm himself to survive and that he could no longer hide behind a woman. A little later, he left the store wearing a new protective suit. Holding the weapon he bought, he wondered if it would be enough to protect himself. A voice then commented on his new look, and he turned to look. With a smile, the young man simply welcomed them back. He quickly noticed that Shen Zhuan and Shen Jiamei were also wearing new combat suits. The older sister remarked that his choice of defensive gear wasn't bad. With another smile, Shen Zhuan pointed out that at least he understood what was at stake, but then warned they had spent all the money. Surprised, Song Chao asked how that was possible since he thought it was a lot of money. The woman explained that precisely because it was a lot, they bought a lot of things, while the younger one thanked him for the candy. Outraged, the young man asked who had authorized buying candy, but Shen Zhuan just told him not to worry about it. Right after, Tiger's group appeared and surrounded the three in the middle of the street. On the deserted road, Tiger's men positioned themselves for the ambush they had planned. Soon, the group's yellow vehicle came flying at high speed through the night sky. Using a tech visor, the scout locked his sights on the target to confirm its position. Then the man stood up and warned his companions that the target was there. One of the thugs turned to call the boss who was waiting for the signal. Soon Tiger appeared from behind, commenting that the prey had finally arrived. With a quick grin, the gang leader agreed everything was ready for the attack. He then shouted for his lazy men to get ready for action. Tiger's final order was not to kill the sheep, since the goal was only the money. With a smile on his face, he gave the command to fire and his men prepared to shoot. At that exact moment, a huge explosion engulfed the vehicle and the road in a ball of fire. One of the thugs looked at the aftermath without understanding what had happened. Then Tiger shouted at his man, asking how they would get the money after killing them. The gang boss called them idiots, saying if they'd been blown up, the trip was for nothing. As they approached, a henchman found only the burning wreckage of the vehicle in the middle of the road. At that moment, Tiger's eye caught sight of a projectile being fired toward him at extreme speed. Then a second, even bigger explosion engulfed them all and launched the henchman into the air. In the distance, a triumphant cry echoed amidst the flames of the explosion. Smoke still rose from the barrel of the weapon that had been fired. With a victorious smile, the shooter bragged about hitting them all with a single shot. While Song Chao was still on the ground, Shen Jiamei celebrated that everything had gone up in flames. Amid the fire, Tiger realized what had really happened and cursed at the blunder. Lying on the ground, he tried to understand what was going on as he saw his men scattered around. The leader stood up looking at the explosion and questioned if they had been bombed. He soon realized it had been a counter-ambush, where they used the empty car as bait for a long-range attack. With that, Tiger concluded that a second wave of artillery would soon follow. Immediately, the gang boss shouted for his men to get ready. The order was for one of the thugs to take some others and go deal with the shooters. Then the man called his companions to go with him toward the attack. From afar, Song Chao watched the enemy group advance. Shen Jiamei then warned her sister that someone was coming toward them. The young girl looked at her weapon with a worried expression. She soon realized the ammo still hadn't finished reloading. Because of that, she admitted she wasn't good at close or mid-range combat. But remembering a piece of advice from Shen Zhuan, she decided nothing gets solved without firepower. Next, a combat drone system activated on her suit. Several missiles were launched into the night sky. Even with the attack, the girl said that still wasn't enough firepower. A group of thugs charged across the wasteland among the debris. The leader shouted that they needed to eliminate the sniper on the hill as quickly as possible and to watch for attacks. One of the men in heavy armor looked up at the sky, confused by the warning. At that moment, an energy beam hit him directly, making him explode, while another thug was struck in the back. One of the gang's women then shouted to the boss that Kongzi's head had been blown off. She then identified the weapon as a precision rifle and ordered them to find the source of the shots. Soon the woman was also hit by another energy beam that disintegrated her instantly. The group leader cursed as he saw another of his members being eliminated like that. Looking toward the hill, he tried to figure out what the hell was attacking them. The answer came when he spotted Shen Jiamei with a levitation cannon and drones floating around her. One of the levitation drones began charging its energy for another shot. The man then panicked upon realizing realizing that kind of weapon had been sold to a civilian. With a confident smile, the girl prepared for the next attack. The gang boss could only scream at what was about to happen. The drones in the sky glowed brightly before firing together. With one last curse, the remaining thugs were swallowed by a massive energy beam. Shenjaime then smiled and said she knew her sister had been right all along. Back at Linjing base, the night carried on normally under the city lights. In an alley, the informant lit his pipe to smoke peacefully. He soon took a long drag and slowly exhaled the smoke from his mouth. Suddenly, a figure approached and asked what a snakehead was doing there. The man accused him of selling the information about the rich boy and asked what the deal was with Tiger. With that, he revealed he had heard that Tiger was a slave trader from the Southern District. The informant confirmed that the Southern District was known for kidnappings and slavery, but said he never risked getting into that business. With a grin, he explained it would be a waste to die when he could use the supplies to have fun. Meanwhile, on the road, Tiger was standing back up amid the fire and his fallen men. Eventually, he noticed a large crowd approaching for battle. Soon Shinjoan rushed forward at high speed and leaped over the remaining henchmen. With that, Tiger concluded that the two flowers of the west side were no ordinary opponents. With a smile, the warrior said it had been a long day of ambushes and it was time to play, showing why she was known as the Flower King. Shinjoan began her attack with two quick, precise shots. Next, she took down two more henchmen while counting each of her targets. With a spin in midair, the warrior dodged incoming bullets and cut down another enemy on the ground. She then kept moving, dodging the projectiles as she counted the 6. As soon as a thug fired, she landed and eliminated 2 others before they could react. With that, Tiger shouted for his men to kill her the moment she touched the ground. The fighter then activated the double jump system on her boots. A propulsion blast launched her back into the air out of the enemy's reach. One of the henchmen shouted in shock as he saw her jump in midair. At the peak of the jump, she aimed her weapon down. Shenjoan landed with a heavy impact right in front of a masked thug. The man only managed to curse at her before the direct clash began. With a quick move, she blocked the blade of an enemy who tried to attack her. She then pierced through the mask of another thug with her weapon. To finish, she leaped and struck the last standing man, completing her count of 9. One of the survivors screamed in terror at the scene while a voice commented it was a good warm-up. The brutality of the fight left Song Chao frozen as Shenjian said she hadn't even thanked them for showing up. Tiger's eyes filled with rage at the provocation. The woman then thanked everyone for helping her test her new combat equipment. With blood dripping down her face, she finished by saying they had all done a great job. The story then went back to 30 minutes before the confrontation. At that moment, Song Chao asked if someone might be waiting for them on the road ahead. As a message came in, the older sister concluded they would be targeted, and the younger one suggested her attack plan. With a smile, Jemmy agreed with the long-range support strategy. Right after, Joan told the young master to stay with her sister because she couldn't count on his combat skills. The plan was to use the car as bait to draw the ambush fire and catch them off guard. Still unsure, the young man asked if that was really necessary and suggested taking a detour. At that instant, the woman demanded to know what he was talking about. Pointing her finger, the strategist made him listen. The bandits were there to rob him. Their intention was to take his property, sell his meat, enslave his soul, and take his life. Given that, she asked if it wasn't necessary to kill the scum trying to rob, enslave, and murder him. The logical conclusion, according to her, was that their only choice was to eliminate them. Back in the present, the fight continued with Joan blocking a strike and kicking an enemy. Amid several opponents, the fighter moved with agility while shooting. Her shots continued in rapid succession against the remaining thugs. One of them fired repeatedly, but cursed when he saw the bullets couldn't pierce her armor. Meanwhile, the young woman slid across the ground, dodging bullets amid the gunfire. She then hid behind a rock to escape the enemy fire. When she noticed her weapon was out of ammo, she simply sat down and asked if she wasn't being a bit dramatic. Then the thug in heavy armor shoved his companion aside and yelled at him to move. Right after, he aimed a huge cannon at her and roared for her to go to hell. The strategist's expression changed as she realized the danger approaching. Almost at the same time, another man with a heavy machine gun started firing, creating a curtain of fire. The rock serving as her cover was struck by a huge explosion. While cursing, the young woman shielded her face from the flying debris. Amid the attack, she activated a kinetic shield to defend herself. The energy field blocked the barrage of bullets coming her way. One of the bandits laughed, thinking she was dead, as a huge blast erupted behind the barrier. After the detonation, one of the men declared the job was finally done. The group's leader then ordered them to go find her body in the smoke. Suddenly, a beam of light hit the armored thug in the chest. The attack disintegrated him completely before he could scream. From afar, Jamai reminded them not to forget about the long-range cannon. With a smile, John praised her sister for the great teamwork. Finally, the warrior stepped out of the smoke and began firing at the remaining henchmen. Thus, one of the last henchmen screamed in pain as he was hit by one of the shots. Soon another man cursed when he saw his weapon couldn't hit her through the shield. Amid the fire, Tiger also cursed as he noticed his men were being defeated. With that, the leader shouted for her to go to hell and fired his weapon at his opponent. The projectiles flew at high speed, but the fighter managed to dodge in time. Then a targeting system activated on her visor to track the enemy fire. With an acrobatic leap, the warrior dodged the shots and landed on the ground. Seeing this, Jemmy screamed her sister's name in total despair. Song Chao also reacted in shock, saying it wasn't possible. Tiger let out a sigh of relief and began laughing at the situation. However, Joan used the momentum to spin in the air while the enemy shouted her name. Right after, she landed sliding across the ground to block the enemy's armed arm. Then she fired her weapon point-blank directly into his arm. The leader was stunned, not understanding how that was possible. Without hesitation, the young woman kept shooting repeatedly at the opponent's arm. As one of the thugs shouted for Tiger to duck, another gang member was struck by a shot. With her helmet activated, the warrior aimed her weapon after wounding the enemy. Then she turned and asked if their boss's name was really Tiger. While the man was on the ground, she taunted him not to be shy and to fight back. One of the bandits looked terrified at his fallen brother, not understanding the situation. Holding an even bigger weapon, the fighter called out for whoever was hiding to come out and play. Then she asked if they weren't going to try robbing them again, since hiding wouldn't earn them anything. Hearing that, the wounded next to Tiger told him to leave, saying they weren't fat sheep. Realizing they had walked into a trap, the two fled, concluding it was a wolf in sheep's clothing. After their escape, the battlefield was left covered in fire and the bodies of the defeated henchmen. None of the men who stayed to fight survived the confrontation. With her weapon in hand, the fighter stared at the horizon and wondered if the others had fled, while her helmet scanned the area. Soon a voice called for her in the silence. It was Jaime running toward her with Song Chao right behind. With a smile, the warrior turned to respond to her younger sister's call. Suddenly, she fell backward, fainting into her companion's arms. Seeing this, the young man rushed over and asked what was wrong. The younger girl realized her sister's armor had been pierced by special bullets. The projectile had gone through the protection, and luckily the remaining enemies had fled. Even injured, Joan suggested they return to Linjiang first. Back at the base, she asked to be taken to Dr. Xu. Soon, a woman in a lab coat appeared, the right person to handle that kind of wound. Inside the surgery room, the doctor remarked that it was a rare scene to witness. She went on to say the patient also had her moments of weakness. The doctor then teased that it was the first time she had seen her in the hospital for misjudging her shield's strength. With a sarcastic smile, Hebu Jing of Linjiang Bay's private hospital said she almost laughed at the situation. Lying on the table, the fighter simply told the doctor to shut up. The doctor then asked who could have ammo strong enough to pierce level 2 armor, and the patient replied it was just bad luck. Next, the doctor asked if it was true she had fallen in love with a rich, stupid man. Joan admitted there was no point denying it and asked about the others. The doctor reassured her about her sister, but said the boy seemed more interested in the capsules. Apparently, he had never undergone body enhancement before and everything seemed new to him. With that, the wounded woman wondered who the hell that boy was. With a smile, she just said nobody knew the truth. Soon after, Xu Jing suggested she should have bought a rechargeable battery or a shield module for the new equipment. Embarrassed, the patient just watched as the surgical instruments were prepared. A little later, the doctor asked if she wanted anesthesia, but the woman, groaning in pain, said maybe not. Even in pain, Joan refused the anesthesia, explaining it took time to regain sensation. She added that a big show was about to happen and she didn't want to miss it. The doctor just listened to the excuse and prepared for the procedure. Then Xu Jing scolded her and warned she would remove the bullet, but she would need to rest for 2 hours to recover. The doctor then called the patient's name upon noticing she wasn't paying attention. With a blank stare, the warrior only gave a vague, nonsensical reply. With that, mechanical arms appeared to restrain her while the doctor shouted that she couldn't be thinking about food. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a bar was completely empty and silent. Suddenly, Tiger was thrown hard onto a table, breaking it on impact. Right after, Jaime ran to support him while the other companion watched the scene. She then ordered the man to get help and medicine immediately. The young man ran to the back, shouting that the medicine box was there and asking where everyone was. At the same time, the girl tried to calm Tiger, asking him to be patient because the medicine was coming. Wounded on the ground, the leader could only mutter that they were idiots. At that moment, a figure approached and asked if they couldn't see what was wrong. From afar, the companion noticed there were no more caretakers at the base. Jaime turned her face toward the voice, trying to understand the situation. The mysterious person revealed that everyone there were invaders while pointing a weapon at them. Right after, the young man came across one of the intruders wearing a white protective suit. Suddenly, several figures in identical suits appeared and surrounded Jaime and the wounded Tiger. One of the intruders grabbed the woman's hair and slammed her face hard against the ground. Even immobilized, she kept screaming her ally's name, but was ordered to shut up. With difficulty, the wounded man turned to the leading figure and asked what this meant. Finally, a man with a pipe revealed himself in front of a door. accompanied by more guards. Tiger and his companions were now completely surrounded by the group of invaders. Even while captured, he demanded to know why the man was in his territory and what his intentions were. The group's leader just stared at him with a mocking smile. Then he knelt down and told Tiger not to worry about the situation. Next, he stepped closer, saying he could explain everything that was happening. With a finger raised, the invader declared that everything could be summed up in a single sentence. It then revealed that the real problem was that they had gone after Shenjian. The revelation left Tiger and his companion completely shocked. Outraged, the young man accused him of having leaked the information, but the leader only responded with mockery. As the man began shouting about how many of his people had died, a guard pointed a gun to his head. He went on to explain that because they had targeted Joan, the other 3 bosses of Linjing base were now demanding an explanation from the southern district. Upon hearing that, Tiger could only mutter a single word. Then the invader revealed that the lone wolf had been submerged in cement and killed. The man continued, saying that since some didn't think that was enough, they asked the Hell King's men to help carry his belongings. Placing a hand on Jiami's head, he told Tiger that the situation was also difficult for him. Then the leader taunted him to look at what he had become. With his hands together, the invader suggested he send the Buddha to the heavens to go help his brother. Right after, he made the final offer for Tiger to transfer all his credits and properties to them. In a laboratory, a complex DNA chain floated inside an aqueous chamber. With a fixed gaze, Song Chao watched the scene intently. He then stepped closer to a large glass capsule where a bubbling fluid swirled. At that moment, a voice commented that he seemed interested in the enhancement fluid. Soon after, Xojing appeared at his side and observed him for a moment. The young man then asked if Joan was okay, but the doctor reassured him that Jaime was already taking care of her. Hearing the news, Chao let out a brief sigh of relief. Then an older scientist asked if he would like to try genetic enhancement. The boy turned his head toward the voice. Without hesitation, he asked how much the procedure cost. The doctor replied it was 800 credits with installments, which the young man thought was a bit expensive. The researcher scolded him, saying he must have misunderstood what enhancement drugs were about. He went on to explain that thanks to the invention, people were able to survive mutant creatures and improve their physical abilities. As the young man listened, the scientist concluded that the true value was in the foundation of survival and the dignity of life. Finally, he showed the image of a chained person and asked if the boy still thought the price was expensive. Moments later, Chao was already floating inside the capsule, while the scientist congratulated Stebujing for selling the product with a 500% profit. The doctor commented that he had clearly never seen a genetic drug before, which made the overpriced sale a basic operation. Soon after, as he walked away, the researcher asked if Joan was still resting. The small floating robot next to Xojing began processing the requested information. Suddenly, the drone reported that the patient had left a note and escaped, making the doctor simply say she already knew. The message left by the warrior simply apologized for the rush and promised to pay next time. With that, Xojing just said that she needed to learn a lesson. That same night, on a street in the city, the group's leader was boasting about how ordinary people were. As he walked, he celebrated how happy he was with the results of that day. One of his subordinates approached and called him boss. The man asked if it was really safe to leave Tiger alive. The pipe smoker simply questioned his companion's concern. With a laugh, he explained that all of Tiger's men and suppliers no longer existed. The former leader was now completely alone and powerless. He then revealed they were only helping Ji Kuo collect a debt. Holding his pipe, he said that the scheming of the big bosses wasn't their problem, since they were only hired to guide the way. Suddenly, a voice interrupted and asked if the one who hired him also wanted an invoice for the company. Startled, he turned, trying to see who was speaking. As the figure approached, she accused him of leading a group to her home for an ambush. Shinjan then revealed herself, explaining that after a winner is decided, they take people to copy the loser's house. With a smile, she pressed the man, asking if, as an honest businessman, he had nothing to say. The boss could only mutter an insult upon realizing the trap. Even so, he greeted the newcomer, commenting that he had heard about her injury, but Joan replied that thanks to him she wasn't dead yet. Then he reminded her that he had warned her about the fight, but she retorted that he hadn't mentioned armor-piercing bullets. Soon, the two began laughing about the situation. Their shared laughter went on for a moment. Then the man's expression changed and he asked what she wanted, telling her to give her next order. The young woman told him to relax, saying she only wanted to settle accounts and talk business. But the subordinate asked if she really intended to do business with an intelligence group like theirs. Then the leader commented that they didn't get much work, and the other man confirmed they really didn't. With a smile, the man said the visitor was always welcome to buy information and told his men to listen closely. Suddenly, the young woman grabbed him by the head, saying this was a good business opportunity. While pressing him, she asked if it wasn't true. The leader then asked what she meant by that. She went on to reveal her phishing plan, in which she would spread information to lure people with bad intentions. The strategy was to draw the targets into a trap. Then the woman explained she would kill the enemies, confiscate their belongings, and sell what was left at a discount, splitting the profits with them. But the man expressed concern, saying people like King Jiao Wang would certainly come after them. Even so, the subordinate tried to argue, reminding her they were just an intelligence group. So the visitor ordered that if he couldn't decide, he should go back back and consult his superiors. Then she warned that any future intelligence mistakes would result in a cut from his share. At that moment, the boss recognized the anonymous credit card where Tiger's funds had been transferred and began to scream. Desperate, he touched his neck and realized when the collar had been placed. Quickly, the leader apologized and accepted the deal, and the young woman said she would forgive him. Holding the card, she advised him to be a good boy and said she looked forward to working together. As soon as she left, the subordinate asked why his boss hadn't stopped her. The young man insisted on knowing why his superior hadn't acted. Then the boss revealed they weren't alone, as several armed figures suddenly appeared in the alley. Next, the leader told his young companion that he had already warned him not to underestimate those people. Still, the subordinate tried to understand why the visitor would come there just to blackmail him. Meanwhile, the young man's visor detected someone else approaching. Far away, on a rooftop, another figure suddenly sneezed. Sitting at the top of a building with a gun, she simply wondered if she had caught a cold. Back in the laboratory, the young man felt his body sinking into a deep sea as two beams of light appeared in the distance. Slowly, he opened his eyes and realized the brightness he saw was actually the ceiling above. He soon covered his face with his hand as he slowly woke from the procedure. Then he sat up in bed and looked around the medical equipment room. With a hand on his chin, he wondered if the strengthening had already finished. Looking at himself, he noticed he seemed stronger than before. Then he called out to see if anyone was nearby and lifted the blanket. A woman entered the room carrying a tray, but stopped when she saw the scene. She asked what he was doing. Then she excused herself and told him to get cleaned up, but the young man tried to stop her from leaving. Beside them, Sujing laughed, commenting it was the first time she'd seen someone worry about that part of the body upon waking. Completely embarrassed, the boy covered his face and asked her to stop. At that moment, the doctor commented that since he didn't have strengthening drugs where he lived, she would give him knowledge about them. While he still covered himself, Sujing explained that such drugs enhanced physical abilities, but that was only the basics. She went on to detail that the enhancement improved vision, smell, taste, reaction speed, and muscle strength. Then the doctor revealed that higher-level enhancements made the body nearly indestructible and capable of fighting mutants. She concluded that the last stage was power enhancement. Right after, Sujing told the boy he didn't need to know about those things for now. If finished, the doctor advised him to simply run if he was unlucky enough to meet someone with that level of enhancement. With that, the boy understood how dangerous they could be. At that moment, the two sisters, Shen Zhaoan and Shen Jiami, entered the room, and the air went completely silent. The pink-haired woman took a sip from her bottle. Then she told Sojing that nobody had ever seen anything like this in Linjiang. The doctor agreed, saying it was true. Meanwhile, the young man scratched his head for a moment, processing the information. He then asked the price of several drugs, explaining he needed to buy as many top-quality ones as possible. As the younger sister began to talk about the price, Sujing smacked her and told her to be quiet. The girl crashed into a panel, pointing out that medicine here was quite expensive. The doctor explained that Linjing was a small place, and if he wanted good quality drugs, he would need to find 200 vials so she could sell them. Inwardly, the doctor thought there were many things about killing him that she couldn't say. Then the boy asked if those potions could actually be used. She scolded him, clarifying that strengthening drugs needed to be calibrated for use. Understanding this, the boy could only utter a single word. Then he asked if there was any drug that could be used directly. Sujin commented that he really wouldn't give up on the idea. Then she proposed that she could order a batch of easy-to-use drugs that wouldn't go wrong, but the price would be high. Without hesitation, the boy immediately accepted and asked her to place the order, with a price of 500 yuan. Sujing confirmed the deal and he accepted with a smile. Next, the young man asked how much higher-level drugs cost. The doctor explained that their outrageous price was the reason none existed in Linjiang. He listened with a serious expression. Finally, Shen Zhaoan revealed that the starting price of high-level liquid medicine was 10,000, and power drugs were at least 100,000. Shocked by the amount, the boy only stammered as the woman warned him not to even think about it, because they couldn't afford it. After the group left, the laboratory hallway became empty and silent. As they walked away, Sujing asked what their next plans were and invited them to spend the night, reminding them they would have to pay. The pink-haired woman joked that since they were basically family, rent should be free, but the doctor told her to keep dreaming. Then the younger sister asked if the doctor stayed up late, and the woman said she had to work overtime to pay for her meals. Meanwhile, the visitor just stretched silently. As for the boy, he stayed where he was, lost in thought about their earlier conversation. As she approached, the older sister asked if he was still thinking about strengthening drugs, but the young man denied it. The woman just stared at him for a moment, not believing his answer. Then Sujing told her sister to go back with her first and told the others they could do as they wished. Right after, the other woman turned to the boy and offered him advice, asking if he was looking for high-level mutation agents. The question completely caught him off guard. He admitted he was, but said no one would sell them, which made the woman call them stupid before lying down. With a finger raised, she said if there was no market, they could just create one. The idea left the boy completely confused. She explained that they just needed an organization large enough with territory, people, and weapons. With that, she concluded they could then buy anything they wanted. In a quick move, the woman pinned him against the wall, surprising him. She then explained that the more forces he had, the safer he would feel. Not knowing how to respond, the young man just agreed with her statement. Then he admitted he didn't know which organizations he could even join there. Next, the woman cleared her throat to get his attention before speaking. She then proposed they do it together, since he had the money and she had the strength. So the young man asked if she was really suggesting that they should work together. Pressing him against the wall, the woman confirmed the proposal with a single word. He then summarized the deal, saying he would invest the money so she could help him expand the channels and buy the materials he wanted. His partner agreed and explained that since he didn't know the place, he would need help not to get swindled. She then revealed that Linjing was ruled by 4 leaders, but the one from the southern city had been silenced the day before. She showed the tragic fate of those who tried to rob them, who had been brutally killed. The woman concluded that without a powerful force to protect him, events like yesterday would repeat, but they could fix everything. After hearing her arguments, the boy admitted what she said made sense. Eager for an answer, the pink-haired woman pressed him for a conclusion. He then asked why she hadn't started her own organization before meeting him. Without waiting for an answer, he accused the two of spending all the food sale profits on more food despite their old equipment. He reminded her that unpolluted food was expensive and she refused to eat everything. He made it clear that even if they worked together, he wouldn't support her just so she could eat. With no way to deny it, the woman just laughed while holding up bankrupt and glutton signs. Soon after, her expression changed completely as she looked at him seriously. After a brief moment of silence, the boy finally began to speak. He stood up and announced that he would support her in creating the team, which surprised her. Then he demanded she show commitment and give him what he wanted, or he would pull his investment and go elsewhere. The woman just stared at him silently for a moment. Then, a faint smile appeared on her lips. She extended her hand and declared the deal was done. As soon as they shook hands, their cooperation was sealed. As they walked, the pink-haired woman said she would first give him an overview before dealing with the local forces. She explained that Linjing was divided into 5 regions, with each of the 4 main ones having their own leaders and forces. To the east, the transport hub housed the largest black market in the area, run by a businessman who preferred money and information over fighting. The central region was dominated by the tech industry, its leader being a military man nicknamed the General. Then she explained that the southern side was full of bandits, and their boss, the Lone Wolf, was no longer in command. Soon after, she mentioned the northern side of the city but hesitated for a moment. Curious, the boy asked what was wrong with that area. Seeing his persistence, she turned to finally answer. The woman revealed that the northern part was a distribution center for all kinds of bandits and mercenaries. According to her, a leader there was a king who had issues with them, so the best thing to do was simply not go there. The boy then questioned what kind of introduction that was, leaving her flustered. He asked if that meant no one was in charge of the west side of the city. With a confident smile, the woman pointed at herself and declared that this was her territory. Surprised, he noted that all the others had armies, while she had only 2 people, which made her flinch as she said there were historical reasons. Trying to hide her embarrassment, she gave a light cough to the side. Then she explained that the western suburbs had great development potential. She revealed that the area was rich in resources and ancient ruins where valuable things could be dug up. The boy then asked about the downside, and she said the excess of monsters made development difficult, which made him conclude that's why she was poor. He then asked why the others didn't just take the territory for themselves. Crossing her arms, the woman firmly reaffirmed that this was her territory. To finish, she pointed at herself again and repeated that this was her territory. The next day at the laboratory, Dr. Xujing started the conversation with the group. With a serious expression, she asked if they were out of money. The boy confirmed the situation with an awkward smile. Then the younger sister asked if they really planned to work with Cheo Jie, since he was super weak. The pink-haired woman begged her to be quiet and stop talking. Then the young man confronted the doctor, asking if she didn't want the medicine box anymore after he spent all night making it. His partner explained that the food sold for credits had already been eaten before they even got there. The doctor just looked at the older sister and said the decision was hers. The woman turned her face away, trying to think of a solution. Then the doctor proposed that if she acted as guarantor, she would accept the internal account, but charge 20% interest on the debt. The partner complained about the rate, but Xujing threatened her, saying you get what you pay for. With no other choice, she agreed to the deal. Once he got the items, the boy thanked them and promised to pay as soon as possible. Then the group said their goodbyes and left while the younger one said she was going to bed. In the end, the scientist commented that he didn't think she would be willing to give them credit. They all walked in silence down the laboratory hallway. The doctor explained that old friends naturally got discounts out of consideration. Meanwhile, the yellow drone floated beside her. She commented that the partners seemed to be planning to build the team on her own. The scientist revealed that he was already tired of Lin Jiang's stagnant state and thought it would be fun to stir things up. Finally, as she hid in the corridor, the doctor just muttered that she would regret this later. On a busy city street, the group observed the buildings around them. Then the pink-haired partner turned to the boy and confirmed that they needed gold. She explained that she couldn't get supplies for free and would have to trade for them, which made Song Chio question why they needed so much gold. The young man revealed that besides gold, art and antiques could also be used in trades. The younger sister asked why they needed such useless things. He simply commented that the needs of a large base were surprising, quoting a saying about how priorities change once your stomach is full. The pink-haired woman showed concern, saying that even if they found gold, 3 people couldn't carry much. He then suggested buying it from others in the western suburbs, but she immediately dismissed the idea of trading food for gold. After thinking for a moment, the partner stated there was only one way to get what they needed. With a determined look, she told him to just come with her. Soon after, the group arrived in an alley in a simpler part of the city. A man greeted them with a smile, saying it was a rare visit. Then he commented that he didn't expect the West Side twins to be handling their own business, but was cut off when she said she would get straight to the point. Hearing the nickname, Song Chao whispered to the younger sister, trying to understand. The girl just gave him a look to keep quiet. The group then watched from above a busy alley functioning as a slave market. The boy stared silently at the scene. Then the partner approached the merchant and specified she needed 12 people, 8 men and 4 women, only skilled combatants. She added to the order that he must also provide all the necessary equipment. Finally, the young man realized they were negotiating the purchase of human slaves. Moments later, a convoy of military vehicles moved through a forested area. Inside one of them, one of the new recruits explained to a man that they had bought a group of slaves at the market. Then another companion added that these people would join Shen Juwen's team as a reserve of members and labor. A third person simply confirmed that was the plan. The young man watched the scene silently from his seat. He soon noticed no one had spoken since they entered the vehicle. Silence filled the car, while the younger sister slept on the seat beside him. To break it, he commented how quiet the atmosphere was. The partner explained that with life and death uncertain, it was natural for a slave to have no spirit to talk. The boy remembered she hated slaves and questioned her about it. With a cold look, the woman confirmed she despised it in every sense of the word. The mood inside the vehicle grew heavy after her statement as she kept her eyes on the road. Everyone stayed silent, only hearing the engines hum. The boy looked away, unsure how to respond. To break the tension, she announced they would go to the residential area to collect what they needed and then free the slaves. Surprised, he said buying and freeing slaves didn't seem like something she would do. With a smile, the partner asked what he meant by that and announced they had arrived. Then the vehicle stopped in the middle of an abandoned construction area full of debris. The convoy's vehicles parked in a concrete yard surrounded by abandoned buildings. When the watchful boy questioned the place, the older sister explained they had stored all the easily found gold from nearby villages there. Her brother then instructed that one shipment of gold should be moved first, and they take the rest back later. The woman walked to one of the military trucks. Then she opened the transport vehicle's door. Holding it, the commander ordered everyone to get out immediately. The new recruits looked outside upon hearing the order. Then they began climbing out as their leader urged them to prepare for work. She then ordered the men to take the crates from the truck and told the other sister to take the women to pack everything up, leaving nothing behind. The younger sister accepted the order with a smile. The commander turned to the boy and told him to choose what he wanted to take first. Watching the scene, he muttered that the West Side twins were finally using human slaves too. One of the recruits asked another what the reward for the work would be. The other man said they'd end up as labor anyway. He concluded that as long as they wore bong collars, it'd be whatever the buyers wanted, even cannon fodder. Hearing that, the commander turned and asked if they thought she was talking nonsense. The man confronted her, asking if that wasn't exactly the case. With a smile, the woman revealed that the reward would be their freedom again, which shocked him. The other recruits reacted in disbelief, asking if she was joking. The commander confirmed it was no joke and that, besides freedom, they would also get jobs. Smiling, she reminded them there was no such thing as free food. One of the men asked what she wanted them to do, but she only said he didn't need to know yet. Finally, she extended her hand and offered them a chance to try and see if what she said was true. As soon as they opened the crates, the determined young man found several gold bars and thanked the commander for all the material they had gathered. In total, they had collected nearly 23 kilograms of gold, along with some gems and jade sculptures. The boy then said he would start with a 6-kilogram crate, which would be enough to trade for many things. With that, he seemed to get an idea. Then he turned to the group and asked if they wanted to eat something. The younger sister listed several items, while the older one asked for mushrooms, vegetables, and bread. Smiling, the boy said he would confirm their orders. He told them he'd write everything down and it might take a while to return, but the leader reassured him that she would watch over the team. As he lifted the crate, he noticed it felt strangely light. While carrying it, he thought about how future technology could make a fortune delivering food. The commander just watched him silently as he got ready to leave. The younger sister asked if she shouldn't follow him, but the older one replied that as partners, they had to respect each other's privacy and told her to come deliver the reward. The girl was surprised at her sister's plan. Standing at the top of the stairs, the leader stated that you don't doubt a person, you simply hire them. Before the recruits, when the men asked if she would really give them freedom, one of the recruits questioned another if he believed everything she said. From the top of the stairs, the commander looked down at them and ordered everyone to gather around. With her finger raised, she told them to listen carefully to what she was about to say. Then she revealed that their betrayal contract would also deactivate the bomb collars and that she would keep her promise. The recruits stayed silent as she paused before continuing. The commander then announced that she had a proposal to share with them all. Outside, the large mansion stood out in the middle of the abandoned landscape. One of the men asked if the proposal was to form a regiment. As she came down the stairs, the commander confirmed that was exactly the idea. With a smile, she said some of them must have heard of the sisters' reputation. The recruits recognized them as the West District Sisters, known as Shenjaon and Shenjaime. One of them commented they were rare celebrities who hated slaves but followed the lone wolf doctrine. The woman explained that she needed an army to expand her business and that they were all talented. One man pointed out that even the non-combatants had special skills in their fields. One of the female recruits just watched the scene silently. Pointing at the group, the leader said she had bought them so she could offer them a deal for their freedom and careers. The man understood the situation and the logic behind it. He argued that if they didn't agree, the collars wouldn't come off and it was just a change in wording. Mentioning the collars made the other recruits visibly tense. The commander just looked at him with a smile and asked how he came to that conclusion. Then she laughed and said there was a limit to how much you could underestimate people. From the top of the stairs, she reminded them that her stance on human slaves was well known in Wenjiang. She activated a device in her hand to prove her point. Smiling, she said she wouldn't break her promise. Suddenly, one man's collar opened with a snap. Then the object fell from his neck, releasing a puff of smoke. The unexpected action left the other recruits completely shocked. The commander invited everyone to spend the night and think about her proposal, telling them they'd be free to leave in the morning. To finish, she winked and said she was looking forward to hearing their answers. As soon as she left, one man asked what else they could do. The group then discussed the situation, saying they didn't want to follow in the sisters' footsteps, but also didn't want to leave empty-handed. Later that night, in one of the mansion's rooms, everything was quiet. Soon after, one of the recruits quietly entered the room where the commander slept. He saw her resting deeply in bed. Outside, a companion asked how she was, and the man confirmed she was sleeping well. The other recruits gathered, calling her a fool for buying slaves and saying how the West Side twins didn't know what they were doing. One of them asked what they should do now, and another replied they would tie them up. Their leader said they would need to ask her where the weapons and supplies were. The three men laughed together about the plan they had just made. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the house, a recruit grabbed one of the women while the younger sister asked what they were doing. The man claimed the brothers were grateful for their freedom and wanted to give her some life lessons in return. With a serious look, their boss asked if he was happy to bite the hand that fed him. The recruit insisted he was just repaying the favor, which left the girl completely frightened. The leader stared at him in silence, his expression unchanged. He warned him not to do as he pleased with someone who didn't want him, and the man agreed. Finally, the recruit asked him to watch the others and just not interfere. He then continued his reasoning, saying that either way. With a grin, he concluded that once they got the weapons, they could do whatever they wanted. Soon after, one of the men moved silently toward the main bedroom. Meanwhile, the commander slept deeply, unaware of their approach. One of the traitors prepared to strike her with a club as she slept. Then the group of traitors surrounded her bed, declaring that this was their world now. Another man raised a spiked club high into the air. With full force, he brought the weapon down toward the woman. The scene ended with the motion of the final attack. At the moment of impact, the man celebrated the hit, but the blow passed straight through the woman's body. Holding the club, he questioned the strange sensation of the attack. Then the traitor realized something didn't seem right about the situation. The club went right through her image, which glitched like a hologram. Shocked, the man shouted as he understood it was just a projection. The real commander revealed herself at the head of the bed as the group stared in disbelief at the trick. Realizing the danger, he shouted for everyone to get out, but was struck by a sudden attack. Coughing blood, the traitor fell to the ground before finishing his sentence. A voice then stated that he had been far too slow. The other intruders backed away at the sight of their fallen ally, as the leader called them fools for killing and stealing like that. Sitting on a shelf, she held her weapon and commented that she had almost fallen asleep from their delay. Meanwhile, in another room, one of the men swung a metal pipe at the younger sister. Before the blow could land, the girl caught the weapon with her hand. Even using all his strength, the man couldn't move the pipe an inch. Then the girl opened her eyes and asked if they couldn't be a little more decisive. With a snap of her fingers, she said they had been far too slow. While one of the traitors laughed, another shouted, demanding to know why they were taking so long. Their leader remarked that it seemed they weren't very good at fighting. Menacingly, a man told him to keep laughing. He would see the consequences soon. With a swift move, one of the women was brutally slammed to the floor. Walking across the stained ground, a voice narrated about 20 slaves with courage but no brains. The commander added that they had crept behind her back. Standing beside the younger sister, she said at least she still had some men she could use. The girl kicked the squad insignias that had fallen to the ground. The men stared in shock at the objects and asked what they were. One recognized the markings of the squad on their cloaks. With a grin, their leader said it looked like everything was over. The commander simply agreed. With a snap of her fingers, she addressed everyone present. In a quick motion, a weapon was hurled at the remaining traitors. Smiling, the woman announced it was time to move on to the reward and punishment part of the game. One of the recruits screamed desperately as a man cracked the floor with his foot. Another traitor kicked a companion and shouted, asking why this was happening. A voice mocked them, telling the little sisters-in-law to run. Weapon in hand, the figure urged them to run faster. The commander then revealed herself and warned them to run quicker. With a smile, she taunted that the big bad wolf would catch them from behind. One of the men readied himself with a staff. He yelled for his companions to attack right then. In a quick move, he lunged and swung the staff at her. The attack was blocked, leaving him completely stunned. He realized the staff had been stopped by energy radiating from her armor. With a blink, the woman began to ask a question. She then asked if they had forgotten what body armor was. Without hesitation, the leader shot him. At the last second, a small dart grazed past her. Annoyed, the commander complained that she hadn't even given them weapons or armor, and yet they still tried to kill her. The remaining recruits just stared at her in silence. Their leader asked if her reaction wasn't a bit over the top. The woman simply gave him a serious look. She explained that if she hadn't anticipated the situation, she would be the one lying on the ground, and they had no right to complain about dying. The commander concluded that everyone is responsible for their own choices. The man said that if they were going to work together, he needed to understand how she did things. As the remaining traitors fled, a voice remarked that one favor deserves another. Then a headless body fell from the building, rolling across the ground. While the last traitor shielded his partner, he was suddenly stabbed in the back. From the balcony, Shen Zhuan appeared, aiming her gun to finish the job. Meanwhile, farther away, the two other escaping traitors were catching their breath among the rubble. The silence of the night was broken only by the drip of blood on the asphalt. The man stood while his companion slumped in exhaustion. Relieved, the fugitive whispered to herself that she had finally escaped. Then she asked what the two of them should do now. Suddenly, her partner was attacked by mutants and screamed desperately for help. The woman stood frozen, watching the scene. Then she stumbled back, begging for help, saying she didn't want to die. As she turned around, she saw a swarm of mutants approaching. Her eyes widened as she faced the threat coming toward her. A giant creature rose over her, blocking the moonlight. All she could do was let out one final scream of terror. The beast opened its jaws to devour her as the victim could only whisper a last prayer. Meanwhile, hidden nearby, two other traitors watched the scene from afar, trying not to be seen. They shrank behind cover so the monsters would notice them. One of them recognized the creature leading the horde. It was revealed to be a demon devourer leading the attack. The monster's eyes glowed intensely in the darkness. From a vantage point, a man commented to Shen Zhuan about the incredible number of mutants gathered. Shen Zhuan simply gave a faint smile at his comment. Moments later, the horde of mutants turned their backs and began to walk away down the street. Surprised, the traitors wondered if the creatures were really leaving. One of them turned to the group and said that if they had left earlier, they would have had to face all those monsters. At that, one of the women showed an expression of shock. The men looked at each other in confusion. With her face partially covered, another member whispered that it wasn't possible. Hearing the comments, the young warrior stifled a laugh. With an air of superiority, she assured them not to worry, saying the mutants in this region had an agreement with the residents. Then the man asked if it was just coincidence that the monsters always devour the traitors she expelled. Laughing, the woman asked what else it could be. Her gaze then turned serious as she questioned if he was suggesting she could control monsters. Casually, she added that even the wildest dreams had their limits. The man then remarked that the tactic of using one to scare the others worked well. Taking a step forward, the strategist started to walk away while one of the traitors nervously agreed. With a wink, she said she hoped to get more advice from him in the future. Finally, she walked off down the ruined street and welcomed the new member to her crew. Far away, a beam of light appeared in the middle of a green field. With the sound of distortion, the brightness grew stronger, signaling someone's arrival. Moments later, Song Chao materialized there and took his first step into that world. He walked through the grass in metal boots, approaching a house. Carrying a large case on his back, he sighed in relief at finally arriving. Looking around, he realized he was back home. Then he thought that showing up in the yard dressed like that might get him in trouble. Thinking it over, he concluded he'd need to find a way to hide everything. Deciding quickly, he concluded that changing clothes first would be best. As he neared the door, he heard his father asking if it was a new medicine. Sitting in a chair, the man asked if it was for his lungs. At that moment, Song Wengshen looked at his son and asked if he was okay. Now in casual clothes, the young man explained it was a new medicine from the company where he worked. He showed the device and said that if all went well, they would soon be rich. Suspicious, his father asked if he was being used as a test subject. The young man said he would never do that, explaining the medicine was expensive, and this was the only way to get it. Then he applied the device to his father's arm, hoping it would heal his lungs. Soon after, Song Wengshen clenched his fist and joked that he felt like Superman. His son silently watched his reaction carefully. The man then advised him not to meddle in his affairs, but to never betray his conscience. Song Chao just held back a smile as he processed the advice. Finally, he turned to leave and told his father not to worry. He was going back to work. Soon after, Song Chao went to a commercial street and stopped in front of an antique shop. The sign on the facade stood out on the building. Inside, he opened a briefcase revealing 6 gold bars. The shop owner, Boss Ju, was shocked to see the contents. The young man asked him to calculate the price for a total of 6 kilos of gold. The merchant picked up one of the bars to inspect it closely. After a brief analysis, his expression grew serious and suspicious. Boss Ju asked if the young man had done anything to the bars. Confused, Song Chao replied he had brought them directly to the shop. The merchant mused that while gold had no code, the boy didn't seem to be lying. Deciding, he closed the briefcase and said he would take them all. Then he stated he could only pay 250 yuan per gram, which made Song Chao question why. The shop owner justified it by saying he was just helping collect the gold as an advance. He confirmed the payment via transfer on his phone. Looking at the screen, Song Chao decided that next time he would focus on reselling artwork. Suddenly, he remembered something he needed to do. He turned and asked Boss Zhou where he could find a car dealership. The merchant said that since the town was small, he could recommend a good place. He handed him a card from the shop where he had bought his own car. Then he suggested the visitor go there to take a look. As soon as Song Chao left, the merchant messaged a contact asking if there had been any recent gold thefts. Alone, he thought about how there was no record of the crime and no way to trace the gold's origin. Leaning back in his chair, he admitted that doing business with Song Chao was stressful. Finally, he decided he would never get involved in a deal like that again. Arriving at the dealership, the traveler walked into the showroom and greeted them. Right away, he stated directly that he wanted to buy a car. At that moment, a saleswoman approached and offered to show him the models. The sales manager, Chen Jia, formally introduced herself to the customer. The tour of the vehicles began with a white SUV. Next, they passed by a luxury convertible model. A golden sports car was also on display in the main hall. The manager explained that they had the most complete line and asked what his budget was. Song Chao thought for a moment before answering the question. Then he said his initial budget was 1 million yuan, which shocked the saleswoman. Confused by her reaction, he asked what was wrong, but she nervously denied it. The manager then tried to regain her composure and hide her surprise. Once recovered, she asked if he had any specific model in mind. At that moment, the young man's phone began vibrating in his pocket. He asked for a moment and answered the call. On the other end, an unfamiliar voice asked if it was Song Chao. He confirmed his identity and asked who was speaking. Xiuxiu's best friends introduced themselves and said they needed to tell him something. After hearing what they had to say, his expression changed completely. With a serious tone, he thanked them for the information and said he understood. Once the call ended, he put the phone back in his pocket. The manager came closer and he turned to speak directly to her. Urgently, he asked if there was any car he could pay for and take immediately. Moments later, a white SUV shot out of the dealership at high speed. The vehicle screeched around a tight corner, tires squealing. Accelerating even more, the car disappeared on the city's horizon. With his hands steady on the wheel, he focused completely on the road. As he drove, the young man muttered the name Xiuxiu aloud. On the phone, Zhao Yu explained that a wealthy man with a bad reputation had been pursuing Xiuxiu, but she had rejected him. She then revealed that the man offered her money to go to a karaoke bar, asking her not to tell the family. Hearing this, Song Chao clenched his teeth as the friend admitted she found the situation inappropriate. Already inside the car, he immediately asked Zhao Yu if she knew where they went. Once he got the answer, the vehicle sped up and drifted through a corner at high speed. With a determined expression, he stayed focused on the road ahead. Soon after, he stopped in front of the Heaven and Earth karaoke building. As he entered, the receptionists greeted him at the front desk. One of the employees tried to get his attention, pointing toward him. Ignoring her, the young man simply leaped over the counter while the receptionist shouted for him to stop. He ran down the hallway, ignoring the pleas for him not to barge in like that. As he advanced, his eyes scanned from side to side. His search led him to stop in front of a specific door. Without hesitation, he threw the door open and shouted, "Song Wengxiu." Inside, a burly man was holding the girl by her arms. Startled, she recognized him and called him brother. His hand trembled on the doorframe as he started questioning her. He demanded an explanation for what was going on in that place. The scene widened, revealing the luxurious interior of the karaoke room. Several men sat around the couches, staring at him. The man who had been holding the girl turned and asked who he was. Song Wengxiu then also asked what her brother was doing there. With a grin, the thug snapped his fingers and called him brother-in-law. Hearing that, the young man's gaze hardened as the man said he'd arrived just in time. Then the thug ordered him to stand there and watch as they taught his sister a lesson. Turning his back, the young man repeated brother-in-law with disdain. Immediately, his sister screamed for him to run and call the police. One of the men stepped forward with a smirk, telling him to stay still so they wouldn't have to chase him. Before he could react, a fist came flying toward his face. In an instant, Song Chao countered with a direct punch that sent the man crashing to the floor. The thug lay on the carpet with his face bruised. The scene left both the gang leader and Song Wengxiu completely stunned. The other two henchmen quickly charged at him at the same time. Watching them, the young man noticed how slow their movements were. He even wondered if they were just pretending to fight. Taking advantage of an opening, he landed a punch on the first opponent's face. Then he knocked out the second man, questioning if this was the power of genetic modification. Leaving the two unconscious on the ground, he turned and apologized briefly. With an aura forming around him, he faced the leader and asked what he had said earlier. As night fell, the scene shifted to a quiet city street. Outside, Song Wangxiu watched her brother, who seemed to be processing what had just happened. As they walked, he called her comrade Song Wangxiu, and she asked what was wrong. In a flashback, the girl asked when he became such a good fighter that he could take down 6 men. Then she held up a recorder, and he asked why she had brought it, thinking she was on their side. Back in the present, she said she needed to protect herself, but he retorted that she shouldn't have gone there. Shocked, she froze when he asked if she hadn't just gone there to play house. Turning her face away, his sister tried to justify herself, saying that wasn't her intention, but he insisted that she look him straight in the eyes. Faced with his seriousness, she finally admitted that, in truth, she had planned to go out with the man when she agreed to meet him there. Her confession left Song Chao completely stunned. She then explained that she made that decision because their family was in debt and she was no longer that young. With a faint smile, she added that since she wasn't ugly, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. After that, she said this way he wouldn't need to worry anymore and could return to studying at college. The young man stayed silent for a few moments. Then he asked if that man would have become his brother-in-law if he hadn't shown up. With a serious expression, the brother firmly said that would definitely never happen again. Holding the recorder, his sister asked if the men would come after them because of this. Concerned, he admitted that this was the only thing that wasn't safe. Frightened, she ran up to him asking what they should do, and he told her to come so he could show her something. Already in a parking lot, he declared that to prevent retaliation, he now had power and money. Standing before several cars, he said that, as she could see, he was strong now. In front of a white car, he explained that he had gotten a good part-time job, which gave him both the money and the car. Incredulous, his sister asked if that was a bus, while he promised to give the family the best life possible. With his hand on the car's hood, he said they would never have to worry about money or depend on anyone else again. With determination, he declared that he would keep his promise to get them out of this situation. Immediately, the scene shifted to a gateway opening somewhere else. Then the image revealed a house with a courtyard in a rural setting. Inside the new place, he announced that something important was about to happen. At his side, his sister nervously asked if the procedure would hurt. Assuring her it wouldn't hurt at all, he pressed an injector into her arm. While watching the injection site, he explained it was a medication to strengthen the immune system. Suspicious, the girl quickly asked if he had also used it on their father. Her brother confirmed while taking another injector from a box. Gesturing, she asked if this was a new kind of immunity drug. He replied yes. His sister then assumed his company must be pharmaceutical, but he clarified that it was a clinical trial of a drug he had developed himself. The revelation left her completely shocked once again. She asked if he had used the drug on himself, and he simply replied that the technology was already mature. Closing the box, he explained that there still weren't enough volunteers to test the medicine and release it on the market. With the image of Shenzhen in mind, he said he knew the owner of the company, who was trustworthy, and had given him the car and lots of money. Then he confessed to his sister that at first he had the same doubts as her and almost refused. Soon after, he admitted that the offer he received was too good to ignore. Even so, his sister came up behind him, warning that it would be better to be cautious, but he only replied that this happens because they were poor. At that moment, a message from his classmate Miao King arrived, and his sister curiously looked at the screen. The text was an invitation to a class reunion, but he recalled that the organizer wasn't a very pleasant person. Far away in an office, Miao King herself was reading the invitation on her phone. With disdain, she wondered who would have time for that during such a busy period. Suddenly, the woman seemed to have an idea as she reconsidered the message. With a new expression, she paused and reflected for a moment. Then she removed her glasses. Holding her phone, she decided she could use the reunion to recruit someone in an emergency. The next day, Song Chao was seen again inside his car. Resting on the steering wheel, he let out a tired sigh. He muttered that he was still here. Back at home, he looked again at the reunion invitation on his phone. Beside him, his sister encouraged him to go meet his classmate. She watched him intently. Without taking his eyes off the screen, he refused, claiming work was more important than social games. His sister scolded him, saying he was being narrow-minded. She then reminded him that many of his classmates studied medicine. She suggested it would be a good opportunity to expand his network, since his company worked in the medical field. The young man thought in silence, aware he couldn't reveal the drug came from the future. After a sigh, he finally gave in and began getting ready to go. While driving to the place, he admitted that her argument made sense. Leaning on his car in the parking lot, he decided to try getting some sales contacts before heading home. At that moment, Miao King's reflection appeared on the window of a nearby vehicle. Inside the car, she recognized him as she passed by. The driver asked what was wrong, but she only said it was nothing. Then she got out of the car. She told the driver she would call when she was done, and he said he would wait for her. Before walking away, she cast one last glance behind her. Meanwhile, Song Chao waited alone inside the elevator. Unbeknownst to them, the two were in the same building for the same event. As the scene shifted to the starry sky, he simply hoped this wouldn't be a waste of time. In the banquet hall, a buffet was set up to welcome the guests. Then a man in a white suit appeared at the reception and invited everyone inside. As soon as he saw Song Chao, the host recognized him and walked over. With a mocking smile, he commented that he still looked poor. Song Chao replied with an ironic grin, saying the classmate was still as short as ever. As the host reacted angrily, another classmate came and greeted Song Chao. Soon after, an old friend hugged him and threatened him with a beer punishment, but he explained he was driving. From a distance, The man in the white suit mocked that he was just pretending to have a good salary. Suddenly, the host's expression changed upon noticing a new arrival. The newcomer was Mang Yuzhao, whom he greeted warmly. The woman asked if the person who had just left was Song Chao, and the classmate began badmouthing him for being poor. Calmly, Mang Yuzhao scolded him, saying it wasn't right to talk behind someone's back. Embarrassed, the man just agreed and promised to be more careful next time. At that moment, another woman came over calling for Mang Yuzhao, who turned to greet her. Her friend held her hands, saying everyone had missed her, but Mang Yuzhao apologized for being busy. In the background, the host watched her with a malicious look. Soon after, the woman was introduced as the president of a tech company and heir to a major corporation. Because of this, the man decided to use the party to try to take advantage of her. Later, Mang Yuzhao was holding a glass of wine. She then opened her eyes thoughtfully. Her friend asked if she knew what Song Chao was doing, and she said she heard he dropped out of school for being poor. With a smile, the friend teased her, asking if the princess of a big company liked poor boys, but she denied it. Mang Yuzhao remained silent for a few moments. Turning her back, she commented that she saw the car he drove and noted it was quite an expensive model. Dropping the subject, she chose to focus on looking for promising talents at the event instead. So if her friend suggested, she asked the boys interested in scientific research about experience in bioresearch. Seated at the table, a man dismissed the idea, saying there were no research internships available at the moment. Soon after, a blonde guy offered to ask a professor for her later. Meanwhile, Mang Yuzhao stayed in the hall, surrounded by other guests. With a discouraged expression, the young woman just sighed. Leaning against the pillar, she wondered if she was being too greedy. Looking at her reflection, she thought that they hadn't even reached their final year or done their visas yet, so she questioned if she had been naive to think she could find someone to help. Deciding to grab a quick bite and leave, she heard someone shout Song Chao's name in the background. The host offered the young man a beer, insisting he drink and telling him not to lie about driving. Nearby, another man watched the scene with a malicious look. Then the host glanced toward Mang Yuzhao. At that moment, he thought he could show her his best side if he managed to beat Song Chao. He kept pushing the drink at him, but the young man ignored him completely. Then another guest put an arm around Song Chao's shoulders, offering to drive him home since he was allergic to alcohol. Tired of the persistence, the young man scratched his head. Then he took the drink that was being offered. With no other choice, he agreed to just have one. The host smiled, revealing he had spiked the drink to put on a show. The two men downed their glasses at the same time. The drink was emptied in a single gulp by both. While Song Chao calmly finished his, the host began to feel sick. Moments later, the man collapsed to the floor and began vomiting in the middle of the hall. Surprised, his friend commented on his resistance, and Song Chao attributed it to work practice. Not understanding, he realized he wasn't drunk and wondered if it was the effect of the genetic drug. The scene shifted to the food and drinks table at the party. With a flushed face, the host muttered that it was unfair. Then he stood up shouting that the situation wasn't fair. Soon after, he lunged at Song Chao, complaining that no one liked him while his friend tried to restrain him. Confused by the reaction, Song Chao didn't understand what was happening. He asked if he had offended him, but the man just shouted about his attitude. While the aggressor yelled that he should humble himself, another guy dragged him away. His friend told Song Chao to leave and go somewhere else. From a distance, Mang Yuzhao watched the commotion in surprise. At her side, her friend asked what those guys were doing. Then their conversation changed, with her friend asking if she had found any candidates, but Yuzhao said no. She admitted she was getting a bit desperate, and at that moment, her phone began to vibrate. Suddenly, she realized she was receiving a call. Looking at the screen, she saw it was her father and wondered if something was wrong. She quickly excused herself from her friend and stepped away to answer. As soon as she picked up, she asked what had happened. On the other end, her father told her to find a quiet place. He said he had something important to tell her, and she went to the women's bathroom. Inside, she agreed to listen. Leaning on the sink, she asked if something was wrong. On the phone, her father asked her to calm down and listen carefully. Then he revealed that the company had decided to cut the research and development project she was leading. The scene focused on the bathroom interior. Standing in front of the mirror, the woman received the news that the board had decided to cancel her research project. She took a deep breath, trying to process the information. Sitting on the counter, she asked what was going on, but her father just confirmed what she had already heard. Over the phone, he explained that the group's cash flow was in danger and the lab's lack of results created heavy pressure. While listening, she realized her father could no longer resist the rest of the board's opinions. She reminded him that the company's only way forward was research, and only a major investment could give them a chance. Raising her voice, she yelled that she already knew everything he had said. Her father quietly replied that this time they had no choice but to yield. Looking out at the city, he added that reality was cruel, and they had to take care of the employees first. After hearing his apology, she stayed seated on the counter with her head down. With teary eyes, she begged her father to give her just 3 more months. She promised to give the board an explanation about the experiments with the genetic repair drug. After a moment of silence, her father said he understood. Leaving the bathroom, Meng Yushu said she would do her best to fix the situation. With a serious expression, she walked away after the call. As she passed by, she didn't notice movement at the men's bathroom door nearby. From inside, Song Chao quietly stepped out, aware he shouldn't have overheard. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and repeated to himself the words genetic drug. Still inside the bathroom, he repeated the words genetic agents under his breath. With his hand on the sink, he recalled that Meng Yuzhao's family group was in the pharmaceutical field. Then he connected the dots and realized she was in trouble because of the genetic research. An idea began forming in his mind. He considered a possibility. Peeking out the door, he thought about trying to sell Dr. Xu's medicine to her. Determined, he returned to the party hall to try his luck. As he approached, he saw the drunken host confronting Meng Yushu and her friend, who asked what was wrong. The man shouted at her to drink the beverage he was offering. With an uncomfortable expression, she tried to refuse the glass, but he shoved it toward her, telling her to stop being silly and drink. The woman was shocked by his insistence. With a threatening glare, the drunk asked if she thought she was too good for his drink. Clenching her fist, the young woman showed her irritation. At that moment, Song Chao stepped in and confronted him about the situation. The pink-haired friend shouted at the drunk to focus. Then another classmate told Miao King to shut up. The host yelled for everyone to get out of his way because he just wanted her to drink the wine. Tired of the scene, Meng Yuzhao's hand tightened into a fist. At that moment, Song Chao placed a hand on her shoulder and called her class representative. She looked at him intently. Then he said he heard she was interested in genetic products. With his hand still on her shoulder, the young man asked if she would be kind. Moving away from the commotion, he gestured and invited her to talk in private. In front of everyone, he asked if he could talk with her about genetic products. The proposal left her visibly surprised. With a smile, he emphasized that he wanted to discuss her group's genetic product development project. Unsure how to react, the young woman just stared at him. Then she turned to her friend and said she needed to discuss business with Song Chao. As she walked away, she told her friend she'd call later, leaving her behind. Her friend tried to call her back but failed. Frustrated, the girl just watched as he led her away. In the background, the drunken host cursed Song Chao for interfering. As they walked off, Song Chao commented on the strange obsession that classmate had with his finances. Meanwhile, the man kept being held back by another guest. With a red face, he shouted that Song Chao stole his chance to impress Meng Yuzhu. He swore he wouldn't let him off the hook. Moments later, the scene shifted to the building's parking lot. The two walked side by side toward his car. When they arrived, she thanked him for his help, and he looked at her in surprise. She acknowledged that he had stepped in to help her. Then she suggested he return to the party and said she was about to leave. Confused, he insisted that he really wanted to talk with her. Seeing his persistence, she turned and asked what he wanted. He revealed he worked for a company that already had samples of genetic agents and admitted he heard her call. He asked if she would be interested in a collaboration, but the young woman clenched her fists and told him to repeat it. Meng Yushu then said she was grateful for his help and wouldn't sue him for stealing trade secrets. Looking down at him, she told him not to belittle other people's work. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys. Grateful for the help, she asked him not to underestimate biological research. Meanwhile, the two of them remained still, staring at each other from a distance in the parking lot. In turn, the young man looked at her, not understanding her reaction. Then he quickly gestured, trying to explain that this had not been his intention. Soon, the young woman began to say that genetic research required cutting-edge laboratories costing billions, along with teams of scientists working day and night. Even so, despite all that effort, she continued, many times the outcome only proved that the research path was a dead end. Furthermore, hundreds of millions were invested annually with no guarantee of reaching any result. In this way, she confronted him directly, asking how he dared claim that a private laboratory had achieved a product and even proposed cooperation. At that moment, she observed him closely before saying anything. Then, grinding her teeth, she declared that belittling others ought to have a limit. With a sharp movement, the young woman turned away. Shortly after, she collected herself and apologized for losing control of her emotions for a moment. Anyway, she said that was all and turned to close the matter. Thus, turning her back, she thanked him for the offer and said she would get in touch if she were interested. At that moment, Song Chao shouted for her to wait, realizing something was wrong. Still, he tried to reach her as she got into the car without looking back. As soon as she sat down, she ordered the driver to leave immediately. After that, the car sped off and left the parking lot. Watching the vehicle depart, he could only acknowledge that she had truly left. Right after, the young man wondered why she had reacted that way, since she had left no contact or business card. Finally, placing his hand on his head, he realized it was a clear sign she did not believe him. The problem, however, was that he really did have the genuine product in his hands. The next day, in a new location, the story continued. Inside a hallway, an older man said he had not expected to be sought out for that sort of matter, but the young man replied that it was because he had many contacts. With a laugh, The man came closer. Right after, he flipped a switch while complimenting the young man's way of speaking. Thus, the lights of a supermarket came on, and the man told him not to worry. Leading him inside the store, he stated he would help him because they were friends. The shelves of the establishment were completely full of products. At that moment, the young man looked around at all the available merchandise. The man then explained that it was an old supermarket, large, with fair prices and many items that could still be put to use. With a smile, he added that the location was good, close to both the city and the countryside, with several supply channels. Seeing the young man's reaction, he asked if the place met his requirements. Finally, he offered the property for $500,000 along with introductions to the suppliers, which surprised the young man at how cheap it was. With a laugh, the man explained that he would not deceive him since he still wanted the young man to sell him gold in the future. Soon after, he asked that he give him priority when selling gold, and the young man agreed it would not be a problem. Satisfied with the answer, the man turned and said he would go fetch the contract. As he watched, he found it strange that the young man had accepted without hesitation and did not seem to be plotting anything. Stroking his beard, the man then wondered where his gold came from, finding the whole situation very intriguing. At last, the young man remained standing in the middle of the store, watching the man walk away. Suddenly, a voice from another room asked if they were talking about a supermarket. Both of them turned to the side the moment the question was asked. Right after, the young man appeared and announced that he would buy a supermarket, asking his father to manage it with the capital that a wealthy friend had given him. In addition, he added that since he couldn't help in other ways, he would take care of the tasks and bring them good food as a gesture of consideration. Thoughtful. The father considered that his body would no longer endure the heavy labor of the mine for many more years. At last, with a smile, he agreed to help his son take care of the store. Next, the scene shifted to the supermarket, fully stocked with merchandise. Clenching his fist, the young man realized that this way he could free his father from heavy labor and have a justification for buying supplies in bulk. Looking at the packed shelves, he concluded that it was time to return to the apocalypse. Soon, the supermarket was prepared, a car was parked outside, and the father began to clean the place. At the end of the cleaning, he sighed while observing the establishment now ready. At that moment, the sister entered the supermarket carrying a box. As soon as she stepped through the door, she greeted him. Holding the box, the young woman said that the potatoes and cabbage he had requested were already packed. Outside near the car, the young man thanked her and asked her to just place the box on the ground. Right after, the girl questioned whether it was alright to give those vegetables to his boss, but he reassured her, saying it was a good gift. Then he changed the subject with a smile. Next, he commented that she was pretty strong to carry such a box without tiring, leaving her confused by the observation. Meanwhile, the sister remarked that the box full of vegetables didn't seem heavy at all. Letting the box drop to the ground, she was puzzled at how her strength seemed to have increased over the last few days. Right after, the young man noticed that his father's expression had also improved, and that his body was visibly recovering. With a faint smile, he realized how frightening the effect of the genetic agent was, an essential item for survival in the apocalypse. Outside, father and sister watched him near the car. Already inside the vehicle, the man commented that the company was very good for providing him with a car of that level, but he heard it was merely a benefit. With a serious look, he advised his son to work hard so as not to embarrass him since his friend treated him so well. Immediately, the young man readily agreed to his request. Driving away down the street, he told them not to worry because he knew what he was doing. Through the rearview mirror, he saw the supermarket grow distant and concluded that it was already enough. Looking at the ring on his finger, he prepared to twist it and return to the apocalyptic world. Suddenly, a doubt arose in his mind. With one hand on the steering wheel, he questioned why he kept risking his life to return to that dangerous world. Soon after, he wondered whether it would really make any difference if he didn't go. His gaze then grew firm and resolute. Meanwhile, the car continued in silence along the road for a moment. A faint smile appeared on his lips. With a laugh, he realized that in doing so he would become the very type of person he hated most. Then he declared that he would not be the kind of coward who takes what he needs and simply runs away. With that, he shouted Shen Zhouwen's name and twisted the ring on his finger. Immediately, a great beam of light descended from the heavens and enveloped the car. The vehicle began to float in the air, lifted by the light. At last, in an instant, the car disappeared completely, leaving no trace behind. With a flash, sparks of energy appeared on the ground of a dark parking lot. Moments later, the car suddenly materialized and landed with a heavy impact. Inside the vehicle, the young man struggled to control the steering after the abrupt fall. Thus, the car skidded across the dark garage until it finally came to a stop. Leaning against the wheel to recover, he was surprised that he had managed to transport the entire vehicle. Despite the setbacks, he looked around and realized the plan had worked. Getting out of the car, he realized this would be of great help. Then he opened the trunk, concluding that now he could bring much more on his journeys. As he planned to put on his protective gear to meet Shen Zhouwen, a creature watched him from the ceiling. After all, this place was not as safe as modern society. For that reason, he grabbed a piece of equipment, unwilling to be caught off guard by a monster. Suddenly, a sound made him look upward. Without hesitation, he turned to grab a weapon from inside the car. At that very moment, the creature leaped from the ceiling toward him to attack. Falling to the ground, he fired his weapon and hurled the creature away with the impact. Right after, he leaned against the car to recover from the scare. Looking at the body sprawled on the ground, the young man wondered if he had really killed it. While boasting about his talent with the weapon, a shot from elsewhere struck the pillar beside him. Then he stared at the hole in the column and questioned whether he had truly hit the monster. His expression changed as he realized the truth about the shot. At that moment, an armed man landed nearby and asked if he was alright. From above, the newcomer warned him not to wander through that area. Soon he recognized the young man as the rear guard leader and wanted to know what he was doing there. With that, he decided that was enough for the moment. He then ordered that the car and the rest of the supplies be left behind. According to him, carrying too many items would slow them down and increase the danger along the way. Listening in silence, the young man was already putting on his protective gear. As they crossed the ruins, he asked if the car would be safe and was told that mutants were not interested in objects. The man then said he would take him to meet the leader before retrieving the rest, and he agreed. With one last look at the car, he left alongside his companion. As they walked, the man commented that it was the first time he had seen a car without weapons or armor. Carrying the box, he added that since it brought so many supplies, it was obvious the leader valued him. At that moment, the young man asked if he was referring to him, and the other confirmed it. Right after, he grumbled that it wasn't really a leader's position, but rather a way to keep him as a lackey. The man then mourned that it was good he had returned because they would have to move in 2 days. Surprised by the news, he asked what had happened. According to the explanation, he didn't know the details, but the leader had said the beast tide was beginning. That meant hundreds of common and high-level mutants would swarm. Even large and dangerous creatures like ghouls could appear during the assault. At that instant, the young man cut him off, seeming overwhelmed by the information. Then he asked if the plan had been to abandon him there, but the man explained they had only found him by chance while clearing monsters in the area. Ignoring the protest, he simply pointed forward and announced they had reached their destination. Confused, the young man looked up and asked what he meant. Still, he kept staring upward, frozen in place. From atop a pile of rubble, a voice remarked that she had sent him on patrol and he had returned with a great gift. It was Shen Zhaoan watching him from the top of the ruins under the moonlight. With a smile, she greeted him and said he was welcome back. However, with a smile, Shen Zhaoan offered to guide them. At once, Song Chao readily agreed, saying he couldn't ask for anything more, Chief. The man beside him then expressed surprise at seeing him return together with her. As the young woman walked toward them, she remarked that, as always, he managed to show up at the most opportune moments. After that, she was direct and asked what gift he had brought her this time. With a smile, the young man replied that she would have to wait and open the box to find out. His companion laughed and said the contents were so impressive that even he had been shocked when he saw them. Winking, the young woman said she would wait with gratitude and anticipation. As they continued along the path, she asked if it was true that he had created a company, but he clarified that it was a battle group. Taking advantage of the moment, Song Chao asked about the story of him being the rear guard leader. She explained that it was natural for him to hold an executive position since he secured supplies, but he retorted that he felt like he was being used as a pack mule. To tease him, she revealed that Shen Jiamei had originally wanted to call the logistics team Leak Squad, which left him indignant. Still curious, he asked what the official name of the battle group was. The man carrying the box only smiled proudly without answering. Immediately, Shen Zhaoan stared at him and asked if there was any problem with the name she had chosen, making him deny it right away. Already tired of the situation, Song Chao pressed once more to know the name. Ignoring the question, the young woman pointed ahead and announced that they had arrived. Finally, as they approached, Shen Jiamei appeared and celebrated her sister's return. As soon as she noticed who was accompanying her sister, Shen Jiamei showed surprise. With a cheerful shout of welcome, she ran towards Song Chao with her arms wide open. The sudden approach made the young man uncomfortable. When he dodged to the side, the young woman stumbled and fell face first to the ground. Still on the ground, she complained that his attitude had been too cruel. At that moment, Song Chao looked around, observing the people gathered there. They were the team formed by Shen Zhaoan. He continued to analyze the other members of the group. Soon, he realized that the number of people had decreased since his departure. Then Shen Zhaoan offered to introduce him formally to her companions. Gathering everyone together, she welcomed him back to the flower shop. One of the members muttered the team's name under his breath. Another, however, noticed a smell coming from the pot. Then the lid was lifted, releasing the steam of the food. With a smile, Song Chao announced that the meal was ready. Right after, he invited the group gathered at the table to begin eating. The others tasted the food, remarking that it was worth staying alive just to eat something that good. One of the girls then offered some to Rula, who showed no desire to accept. Thus, a drop of liquid fell onto the table. With tears in his eyes, one of the men wondered if that was the true taste of food. Right after, another member of the group slapped the young man on the back and promised he would follow him wherever he commanded. Startled by the reaction, the young man tried to move away from the others. Meanwhile, sitting at the table, Shen Zhaoan ate calmly in the midst of the commotion. Then he settled down beside her and she greeted him. Next, the boy remarked that their reaction was exaggerated, but the young woman explained that they had never eaten that way before. Right after, he asked if he had done something wrong, and she replied that a good meal meal helped boost the team's morale. With that, the young man mentioned he had heard that the mutants had been acting strangely lately. Immediately, Shenjian confirmed that the information was correct. Shortly after, she explained that this was the calm before the storm and that the place was not safe. Since mutant hordes were not interested in supplies, the group usually took shelter at Linjing base before the beast tide. The sudden explanation left the young man puzzled. Finally, she clarified that they called the mass mutant assaults the beast tide. Pointing to the surroundings, the young woman warned that in no more than 2 days a massive horde would engulf the place. With a determined look, she concluded that since he had already arrived, there was no longer any reason to delay their departure. Thus, Shenjian hesitated to say anything, making Song Cheo question what was going on. With the revelation, the younger sister grew excited at the idea of more supplies, to the surprise of the others. Next, Lejin explained that he had only managed to bring half of the goods, as the rest were still in the vehicle. Upon hearing this, Shen Jiamai became agitated and demanded that everyone hurry to recover the food and return to Linjing base. Seeing the scene, the older sister remarked how transparent and loyal the girl was to her own desires. With no other choice, she ended up agreeing to the plan of retrieving the materials. Immediately, the leader gestured for the team to start organizing. Right after, she called for Lejin. Then she summoned Ruila. Completing the order, she pointed to a third member and commanded the three to follow. The trio identified themselves as the Feng Sisi squad. Finally, the last member of the group was introduced as Meijia. Completing the formation, a girl named Miyu was presented to the group. The younger sister then winked and ordered the two new members to follow her. Together, they would form the firepower unit known as Sunflower. Meanwhile, the young man was instructed to lead the support group Basil Leaf, guiding the vanguard from the rear. Totally surprised, the young man was left speechless at the order. Soon, a man approached so he could get familiar with his new teammates. The first member kept his face completely hidden under a white hood. The other member, however, revealed her face more timidly. With a friendly tone, the young woman asked that everyone get along during the mission. Moments later, the squad's armored vehicle was already advancing through the city streets. The heavy truck sped across the asphalt. As they neared their destination, one of the men opened the side door and raised his weapon. With a battle cry, he announced to the monsters that he was coming to fight. However, Lejin scolded the noisy companion, saying it wasn't necessary to fight the mutants in that place. Ignoring the warning, the man treated the situation as good training for the team and sought the leader's approval. At once, Shenjian warned him not to waste ammunition, threatening to deduct the waste from his food portion. Right after, she asked Song Chao over the communicator if the rendezvous point with Lejin was the underground parking lot. After the young man confirmed the location, the commander activated a control on the vehicle's panel. Then she instructed him to blend in with the logistics team, as they would be called upon once they arrived at the destination. Meanwhile, the young man observed his new companions in silence. Not knowing how to act, he decided the first step would be to get to know the group better. With that, he broke the silence by saying he still didn't know anyone's name. Taking advantage of the moment, he suggested that everyone introduce themselves since they would be working together from that point on. The older man introduced himself as Fag Su, a clerk specializing in planning. The hooded woman revealed herself as the Dr. Eilina and asked to be guided during the mission. Lastly, the final girl introduced herself as Ki Li, the group's cook. At that moment, the young man explained that he was working with Shen Jian, realizing that his team consisted of a secretary, a doctor, and a cook. Immediately, he despaired upon realizing that his support squad had no combatability at all. Suddenly, the vehicle braked sharply, sending everyone tumbling as the leader questioned whether Song Cheo's car was really there. Lejin confirmed the location even as he understood the commander's hesitation about the situation. As soon as the truck stopped, the commander called the young man outside. Confused, he asked if they had already reached the destination, receiving an affirmative response. Outside, she informed him that the plan would need to be changed. The boy was completely shocked by the scene. On top of a building, a humanoid creature was watching a small being of energy. Nearby, a gigantic monster devoured another of those beings. The massive creature then sat down and stared at the one it held in its hands. Before the horde of monsters, Shenjian explained that this was the beginning of the beast tide. She clarified that the enemies were just beginning to gather and that the goal was to retrieve the cargo and the car before it was too late. Concluding the new strategy, the leader ordered Shen Jiamei's squad to launch the attack and open the way. Thus, Shen Jiamei accepted the order and prepared to leave the vehicle. Fully ready for combat, the young woman positioned herself to begin the attack. The group's first target was a tall, slender creature wandering down the street. Soon the monster turned its head toward the squad. Immediately, an energy projectile struck the creature head-on. The impact caused an explosion that instantly destroyed the target. Celebrating the hit, the shooter confirmed with her partner that the path was clear to advance. Next, the commander ordered the Sunflower Squad to provide cover while she and another member pushed forward. Then Lejin and Ruila were tasked with luring the monsters away from the main path. Finally, Song Chao was instructed to follow the leader and drive his own car, which left him completely stunned. The commander justified that this was the fastest and safest plan as there was no time to waste. Before they could move, a swift mutant charged, and the leader ordered the escort group to intercept it. At that moment, a two-headed monster growled at the approaching group. Jin then shouted for the Sunflower Squad to maintain suppressive fire while he and Rula dealt with the surprise attacks. Immediately, a blur shot past him, forcing him to duck to avoid the strike. The creature's slash missed by inches, cutting only into the ground. Right after, the warrior used his shield to counterattack and hurl the mutant away. With the momentum, the creature was violently smashed against the asphalt. Soon after, another monster leaped toward him from behind. The fighter quickly turned his head as he realized the new threat. Before he could react, a shadow dashed past at high speed. With a single strike, the creature ambushing him was cut clean in half. Rula then revealed herself as the one behind the attack, gripping her weapon firmly. The swordswoman faced the danger with a determined gaze. With a gesture of gratitude, her companion remarked that new allies had arrived for the battle. The celebration was cut short by the arrival of a medium-sized degenerate, making him wonder how they would deal with the threat. Unfazed, the warrior woman replied that it was no problem as she gripped the hilt of her weapon. She then activated the blade to unleash a triple strike, declaring that the situation was still under control. Thus, one of the monsters was struck head-on by an energy beam fired from a distance. Rugula spun sharply as she sensed the imminent impact. Moments later, a massive explosion disintegrated the creature. Right after, Jin scolded her for taking the risk, but she only remarked about the commander's confidence in her aim. Amid the flames, new creatures emerged to attack the group. He then asked if the gladiator could keep going, and the warrior confirmed that the shield bearer was ready. From afar, Song Chao watched the many explosions lighting up the city sky. The young man was amazed by the intensity of the unfolding battle. Outside the parking lot, the group waited for an opening to advance. At that moment, Shen Zhaoan spotted a vehicle in the distance and asked if it was his car. As soon as Song Chao confirmed, the commander prepared the next step of the mission. She then ordered him to follow the companion and retrieve the vehicle, while she provided cover. With a determined smile, the warrior accepted the task without hesitation. He shouted for the logistics chief to follow him. Running toward the target, the fighter warned the young man not to fall behind. As he leaped, he yelled again for the logistics chief to keep up. When he landed, he was faced with several creatures surrounding the vehicle in the parking lot. The monsters turned toward him, ready to attack. Pointing his weapon, the warrior ordered the creatures to back away from what belonged to the group and open fire. With a kick, he finished off the first enemy that had been hit by the shot. Next, he kept firing to eliminate the remaining threats. At the same time, he shouted for Song Chao to run and start the car immediately. Taking advantage of the cover, the young man sprinted toward the vehicle as fast as he could. Once inside, he prepared for the escape. Outside, the fighter kept holding back the creatures to secure the extraction. Just as the car was about to depart, a long-necked monster appeared at the driver's window. Startled, the young man reacted by aiming a weapon directly at the creature. Before he could shoot, the monster's head was severed by an energy blade. Smoke rose from Shen Zhaoan's weapon after a precise shot. From her position at a distance, the commander revealed herself as the one who had saved Song Chao's life. Thus, Song Chao was stunned to realize that the commander had saved him. Right after he got into the car, his companion shouted for him to drive and get out of there. The vehicle's door lock was released for departure. The car then accelerated sharply, leaving the fallen monster behind. As the vehicle maneuvered through the yard, the commander eliminated the creatures that drew near. Seeing the warrior approaching, the young man shouted that he would stop the car for her to get in. She refused the help and ordered them to keep driving full speed without looking back. With a boost from her boots, the fighter leaped at the moment the car passed. The young woman landed precisely on the roof of the moving vehicle. Positioning herself firmly, she prepared to continue the fight. With a confident smile, the commander declared she would remain in the rear guard. Right after, a horde of mutants began chasing the car. Through the communicator, she informed the other groups that the objective had been secured. The message authorizing withdrawal was received by Jin and Rula. Finishing her orders, Shen Jaime was instructed to use her coordinates to open a path through the wreckage. Inside the truck, the hooded doctor ordered everyone to get in so they could depart toward Linjiang. At that, one of the men mocked how the commander had just ordered them to blast open a path. Amid a massive explosion, the car sped forward with the warrior still on its roof. Even with debris falling, she stayed firm and alert to the surroundings. At the wheel, a young man kept driving at high speed along the escape route. Right behind, the armored truck broke through the fire barrier to rejoin the convoy. Inside the lead vehicle, the commander pointed ahead and shouted for everyone to advance. Finally reunited, the convoy of vehicles pressed through the ruined streets toward Linjiang base. As soon as they arrived, a woman in a white coat asked if they planned to move their nest back to Linjiang. The commander explained that it was only a temporary shelter, as she did not want the beast type to bankrupt them. Even without anywhere to stay, she asked for shelter and was told that this was a private hospital, not an inn. By offering a crate of supplies, the doctor demanded meat and eggs and was called a thief. She then calculated the deal, establishing that one crate of supplies equaled 1 month's rent. Next, the woman noticed the car and asked what happened to it. Song Chao's vehicle was completely unrecognizable, with its bodywork and windows destroyed. Seeing the car's condition, the young man fell to his knees and began to cry in despair. The commander tried to downplay the damage, but he shouted that the vehicle was worth the same as tens of thousands of supplies. The revelation about the car's value left the warrior utterly shocked. Watching the two of them desolate on the ground, the doctor sarcastically remarked how they seemed to be having fun. Right after, she asked if the commander was certain about the arrival of the beast tide. Kujing stated that, aside from their group, no one else had reported any sign of the monster's approach. The commander stared at her and asked if she was doubting her word. With a confident smile, she introduced herself as Shen Zhaoan, making it clear her warning was serious. With absolute conviction, she declared that every movement in the western suburb was under her control, knowing even what the mutants would do. She then asserted with certainty that the beast tide would come, and that whoever doubted would pay the consequences. Faced with the threat, Xojing only replied with indifference and turned away. Soon after, someone approached with a tablet, saying the intelligence department had found her to deliver a message. The commander turned her attention to the communication being displayed. The message informed that the city leaders had gathered to question her about the situation regarding the beast tide. While reading the message, Shen Zhaoan called out to Song Chao, who responded without understanding the reason. Without preamble, she told him to accompany her to the meeting the next day, and the young man simply agreed. The commander explained that it would be a chance to introduce the team, and that the damaged car would be handed over to Midyu for repairs. Hearing the conversation, Sebejing questioned if she was truly prepared for what awaited her. The warrior admitted she had no choice but to go, as she couldn't handle one or two of the leaders on her own. Left by himself, Song Chao held the tablet and tried to make sense of everything happening around him. The next day, they arrived at the northern district of Linjiang, an area marked by futuristic buildings. The young man was impressed by the imposing architecture of the local base. He then asked why they were there instead of going directly to the meeting, and she explained that she needed a prior agreement with King Yan. Surprised, the young man wanted to know if it was the same King Yan she had clashed with in the past. The commander confirmed his suspicion without averting her gaze. With a tense expression, she admitted that the two of them had a complicated history. Soon after, they walked down a corridor with polished, gleaming floors. A receptionist in a skirt and blazer greeted them at the entrance. The woman informed Shen Zhaoan that the minister was already waiting for her. The receptionist showed surprise that the visitor had come personally for the discussion. Calmly, the commander explained that a prior agreement with King Yan would prevent many future complications. The silver-haired woman affirmed that she perfectly understood her intentions. Soon after, the hostess asked them both to follow, receiving a word of thanks from the commander. As they walked, Song Chao whispered that the reception didn't seem as hostile as he had imagined. Shen Zhaoan replied that, in a way, she could be considered an ally. The explanation left the young man even more confused about the situation. As soon as they reached the door, the receptionist announced to the minister that Miss Shen Zhaoan and Mr. Song Chao had arrived. Right after, a voice from inside the room authorized their entry. Sitting with her back to the door, the hostess with long blonde hair called out the commander's name. Surprised, the young man realized at that moment that the dreaded King Yan was, in fact, a woman. Faced with the unexpected scene, the receptionist warned that the hostess was about to rush forward. One of the guards tried to restrain her, but she kept insisting on calling for Shen Zhaoan. With a swift motion, the blonde freed herself from the guard's grasp. Then she leaped over the table toward the visitors. With arms wide open, she shouted the warrior's name once again. The minister declared that it had been so long since they had last seen each other. Next, she rushed forward, trying to embrace her. Without hesitation, the commander prepared a kick to intercept the charge. The strike landed squarely on the hostess's face. With the force of the impact, the woman was hurled backward as Shen Zhaoan landed firmly. Seeing the commotion, the receptionist released an aura that enveloped her hands. In an instant, she launched an energy strike at the minister to restrain her. With the impact, the blonde cried out as she was thrown back once again. Immediately after, the assistant ordered that she be restrained. Completely frozen, Song Chao only listened to the request not to let the minister disgrace herself further. As she was held down by the guards, the blonde begged them to release her, pleading not to lose control in the presence of her true companion. Shen Zhaoan limited herself to silently observing all the chaos. Meanwhile, the receptionist covered her face, not knowing how to handle her own superior. Outside the building, the shouts continued to echo through the city. Although tension lingered in the air, Shen Zhaoan tried to justify the chaos, saying that the hostess had simply gotten carried away after seeing a friend she hadn't met in a long time. In turn, the receptionist lamented the scene, especially for not realizing there was an unfamiliar man present. Awkwardly, the young Song Chao apologized for the rudeness and said it was no problem. Now calmer, the blonde woman introduced herself as the head of the Linjiang Census Department, one of the most powerful figures in the city. As she spoke, her body bound with ropes was revealed. Seated in the chair, she demanded to be released, but the receptionist told her to keep dreaming. Right after, the warrior decided to formally introduce the blonde to Song Chao. The head of the census department, Farah Rulin, was also the leader of a large organization responsible for the city's population control. Because of her cruelty and mercenary subordinates, she earned the nickname King Yan in the Palace of Hell. Upon hearing the explanation, the young man muttered that she was a pervert, irritating Shen Jian. Out of patience, the fighter said she hadn't come all this way to watch that scene and asked if they could go straight to the point. The hostess only lowered her head in silence. Next, the receptionist commented on how heartbreaking it was, while a rope of energy materialized. With that, the bindings were undone and the prisoner freed from the chair. Once standing, Rulin referred to her as her beloved childhood friend. Seated on the couch, the warrior directly asked what the hostess meant. Then she warned her not to stir up trouble about the beast tide during the afternoon meeting. From across the room, Rulin insisted that she was also responsible for the city's safety. The minister pointed out that, except for her group, no one else had reported the approach of the monsters. Still, the fighter stated that she would explain everything in the meeting, and that the beast tide would be massive. With disdain, the blonde commented on her self-confidence and asked if there was another reason for her visit. The warrior then revealed that she needed to purchase equipment and supplies directly from Rulin. The leader explained that she required special ammunition capable of piercing level 2 equipment and arming her team. Hearing the request, the hostess questioned whether she had the money to pay for it all. With a confident smile, the fighter simply confirmed that she could afford it. Still amid the tension, Shen Jian introduced Song Chao as the logistics officer of the flower shop and her new partner. Awkwardly, the young man introduced himself and listened as the leader explained that he had access to rare, high-quality products. The revelation piqued Rulin's interest. With a smile, the minister said she would wait to see for herself, while her assistant requested a supply list for the trade. Without hesitation, the warrior agreed to the terms. Right after, she stood up and stated that the remaining matters would be discussed in the afternoon meeting. The hostess and her aides simply watched the pair leave. After their departure, the assistant asked if her superior was certain about that decision. She then argued that by providing a supply channel, they would lose the chance to interfere in the western suburbs. Rulin replied that it didn't matter, since no other faction would allow the region to fall into third-party hands. She concluded further that it was more advantageous to maintain a good relationship with a new ally than to attempt seizing her territory. The minister then reflected that if the beast tide turned out to be real, Shen Jian would use the crisis to consolidate her team's power. With that, Rulin ordered Mibo to pull back the troops and confirmed that the warning about the monsters was probably true. Left alone, the blonde thought about how complicated the whole situation was. Outside, the warrior remarked on how the minister never missed a chance to exchange a favor for a supply channel. At 4:30 p.m., the meeting began in Linjiang's central district. In a virtual conference room, one participant proposed that everyone reach a consensus about the beast tide. In response, the head of the census department, Farah Rulin, suggested a vote to decide whether they would trust Shen Jian. The president of the Linjiang security group, Wei Yun, considered that although he understood her intent, there were no signs of a beast tide. Soon the head of the intelligence agency agreed, claiming that a small wave in the western district did not justify such mobilization. Ignoring their doubts, the warrior stated that the beast tide would be larger than they imagined and that she was there only to prepare, not to ask for their belief. The two men remarked that she still didn't care about anyone else's opinion. Disregarding the debate, Rulin enthusiastically declared that she had already decided to believe her completely. Out of patience, the fighter told Rulin to be quiet and admitted she understood the doubts, but reinforced that no one in Linjiang knew the mutants better than she did. She then proposed a wager to the intelligence chief. If she lost, she would open the western suburb to him, and if she won, he would reveal his true location. The hooded man called her a bastard, while Wei Yun noted that she seemed far too confident to make such a bet. With absolute certainty, the warrior confirmed that she was serious. Next, she admitted to Wei Yun that despite her flaws, she would never lie about Linjiang's safety and hoped they would trust her professional warning. Concluding her speech, she warned that they might not believe her, but they would have to face the consequences. With that, her holographic image began to fade from the conference room. The two leaders simply watched in silence as she disconnected. Despite the tension, the intelligence chief declared that he did not believe in a large-scale beast tide, preferring to trust data and analysis. Next, Wei Yun agreed, saying the problem was confined to the western suburb and that Linjiang's resources would not be used to assist her. Rulin listened to the other leaders' remarks in silence. Already disconnected, the warrior reacted with disdain to the intelligence chief's words. Returning to the meeting, she asked if she should interpret his statement as a personal insult. The hooded man immediately denied the accusation. With that, she admitted that for someone who trusted only in data, the situation indeed wasn't convincing. Soon after, she announced that Song Chao and Mibo would handle the supply purchase, surprising Rulin. Saying her farewells, the young woman told them she would see them in a few days and disconnected from the call. The fighter's chair in the virtual conference room was left empty. Wei Yun commented that aside from being confident in her judgment, she also seemed furious. Rulin then told the intelligence chief that she would not need such a pretext to take over the western suburb, and he defended himself by saying he had only spoken the truth. The man leaned forward and asked if the others were truly satisfied with the situation. Wei Yun reasoned that it would be very difficult to develop the western suburb without going through her. Agreeing, Rulin concluded that it was easier to cooperate than to waste energy on the issue, preferring to focus on her own territory. The intelligence chief insisted that the matter was the beast tide, accusing her of using the danger to mobilize Linjang to her advantage. The minister reflected on the accusation, recalling that the warrior never acted without a major profit in mind. With that, she concluded that she didn't believe the warrior's plan was that simple. Back in her room, the fighters stretched calmly. Soon Shen Jiamai entered and called for her sister, who asked if there was any news. The young woman then reported that 80% of the Western teams were already on their way to provide support. Still confused, Shen Jiamai questioned why the people of Linjang knew so little about the mutants. The warrior explained that the previous beast tides had probably given them a false sense of security. Meanwhile, in Xujing's private hospital communication room, the negotiation began. The trade list started with batteries and charging accessories for vehicles. Next came military nutritional solutions and various types of ammunition. The list also included several models of weapons and their respective rounds. Holding the device, Song Chao concluded the presentation of all the supplies they could offer in exchange. Meibo then agreed to prepare the trade. Regretting the absence of heavy weapons on the list, the young man extended his hand to seal the cooperation agreement. However, his hand passed straight through Meibo's holographic image. Startled, he quickly pulled back as he realized what had happened. Embarrassed, the young man apologized for forgetting she was only a projection, and the woman replied that it was no problem. Taking his seat, Meibo informed him that they would deliver the supplies to the flower shop the next morning for the exchange. The young man then said goodbye as the holographic image disappeared from the room. With the deal sealed, he concluded that despite the difficulties, the negotiation had been a success. Just as the conversation seemed to end, one of the men asked if the negotiation was already over. Right after, he and Li Jin commented to Song Chao that it looked like they had come out at a disadvantage in the deal. The young man then explained that it was a necessary measure and that, to him, those foods were not that precious. Surprised by the response, the two pointed out how reliable he was as a logistics officer. Reflecting on his role, Song Chao thought about how people in the modern world didn't possess the same fighting skills as they did. Suddenly, a voice asked what they were talking about. Shen Zhuan approached the group requesting to be included in any interesting subject. The blonde man explained that the young man had made a bad deal, leaving the leader confused. She turned to him and questioned him about the price chart she had given him. With that, the young man explained that he had only made a small concession to ensure the immediate delivery of supplies and to get help finding a store in Linjiang. The other man pointed out that the amount conceded wasn't even enough to cover rent at Dr. Xu's hospital. The warrior agreed that, thinking from that perspective, it was better not to worry about the details. Next, she asked Song Chao if they had spare food and ammunition. The young man confirmed that the supplies from the census department would arrive the next day and wanted to know the reason for the question. The leader then instructed him to prepare 4 portions of nutritional solution for the guests who would arrive tomorrow. She soon revealed that she had found some helpers, keeping the young man busy with trading resources among the groups. Meanwhile, Shen Zhuan constantly received visits from unknown and mysterious people. As time passed, the atmosphere around them grew increasingly tense. Then the threat finally arrived, starting in the western urban district. Soon, survivors fleeing the region informed the city guards that the beast tide had begun. In less than half a day, the census department in the northern district found rare mutants in the area and brought back corpses as proof. The carcasses of the creatures were presented to Meibo as evidence of the attack. While the leaders debated possible countermeasures, new information began to surface. An urgent report left the intelligence chief and his subordinate completely alarmed. In no time, the intelligence agency in the eastern suburb was attacked by a gigantic mutant. Even though many managed to escape, the losses during the assault were considerable. Finally, chaos reached the gates of the southern suburb. The wall guards were shocked when they spotted the approaching danger. Suddenly, a massive explosion struck the refugee camp. With the surprise attack, the disorganized camp instantly lost 2 of its slave quarters. The monster ward, bearing its sharp fangs. Moments later, a colossal creature emerged amidst the flames, leading the horde as it advanced. In just 2 days, the number of dead and wounded had already reached the thousands. Completely shocked, the intelligence chief wondered how such a thing could have happened. Outside the city, the monster horde continued to gather, preparing for the final assault. Amid the crisis, a holographic call asked if he needed help. Shen Zhuan and Farah Rulin then appeared in the projection. To the man's surprise, irritated by their presence, he asked if the warrior had come to laugh at his misfortune. With a smile, she denied the accusation and said she was there to discuss serious matters. She soon added that whoever needed to laugh the situation had already laughed enough. With the beast tide already formed, the only option left was to face the threat. Rulin explained that the problem wasn't the lack of strength, but the low efficiency in eliminating the monsters, and the warrior asked for a solution. With one finger raised, the minister said she had a suggestion to resolve the deadlock. The other 2 leaders looked at each other, surprised by her proposal. Under the light of a red moon, the dark forest concealed new dangers. 3 mutant creatures moved stealthily through the vegetation. Soon the group found a metal container releasing smoke in the middle of the woods. One of the creatures approached the object and sniffed the air. Suddenly, Several monsters around them began to roar in agitation. Moments later, one of them struck the container with its long tongue. The visor of one of the team members confirmed the movement of the targets. Observing the scene, Le Jin announced that the monsters had begun to move. From high in a tree, he reported that the horde was advancing toward the decoy box, much to Shen Juan's satisfaction. With that, the leader ordered them to hurry and deploy the new bait at the next location. Running through the forest, she shouted for everyone to follow her. As they advanced, Le Jin and the other warrior were surprised by the effectiveness of the plan. Shen Jiamai explained that they wouldn't have survived in the west without a few tricks. The device emitted specific sound waves and odors that generated a pheromone to attract mutants. Influenced by the lure, the monsters approached and devoured it. At times, the creatures even fought among themselves to compete for the object. By deploying a new decoy as soon as the previous one was destroyed, it was possible to guide the movement of the horde. The fighter then declared that this ingenious creation would become her trump card for competing with the other regions. Remembering the meeting, she repeated the word suggestion that she had heard earlier. The scene shifted back to the operations base, confirming the proposal. With a confident smile, she asked if the others didn't agree that concentrating the horde in one place would be advantageous for human firepower. The intelligence chief, however, questioned how they could control the movement of such a dispersed horde. The warrior then warned him about the danger of doing nothing, reminding him that the southern defenses could be easily abandoned, allowing the city to be overrun. Thus, Rulin remarked on how the warrior was resentful for using the situation to pressure the southern leaders. Then the intelligence chief questioned whether she had any guarantee that her plan would succeed. At that moment, Wei Yun's image reappeared in the meeting room. As president of the security group, he offered the necessary supplies provided she could draw 80% of the horde toward the southern part of the city. Right after, Rulin asked if the fighter was confident enough to secure such funding, and the young woman only smiled. Under the moonlight at a base, her answer was that there would be no problem. Thus, the strategist guaranteed she could guide most of the horde out of the southern city. The only condition she imposed was having enough material to produce the pheromone lures. Out in the field, she crouched down to speak with Le Jin. Then Shen Jiami added that she would use special channels to rally the scattered western teams during the mission. With enough teams in the field, they believed they could gather the main force of the beast tide. Next, a diagram illustrated how the lures would be used to attract and redirect the flow of monsters. The device released a signal that drew the creatures toward it. During the attraction process, the number of mutants would decrease due to internal conflict among them. Finally, the commander informed that she would meet with the Western survivors to organize the lure troops. With a handshake, she entrusted her new allies with responsibility for food and ammunition supplies. Thus, the nighttime operation began in the forest. Around a campfire, the leader confirmed that the number of people was sufficient for the mission. At that moment, the hooded man thanked everyone for trusting her and supporting the cause. One of the warriors present revealed his face, marked by scars and mechanical parts. With a determined smile, the young woman proposed to her Western compatriots an insertion operation to cross through the horde. The main plan was to use scout teams to guide most of the beast tide toward the southern city. Under her command, the squads moved and constantly deployed lures to alter the course of the monsters. Soon, one of the mutants approached the small glowing lure on the ground. When the number of monsters in a group was lower than expected, the teams took advantage and attacked. Thus, the warriors eliminated the creatures that strayed from the main horde. Each squad remained vigilant of the surroundings to ensure the mission's success. When encountering individually stronger creatures, several groups cooperated to carry out the lure work. The tactic proved effective even against the most gigantic and dangerous monsters. Each team member prepared for the next phase of the operation. Meanwhile, in the mountainous area of Linjiang's eastern suburb, a sniper commented that the target had appeared far too quickly. Moments later, a massive boar-shaped creature charged forward at high speed, raising a cloud of dust. In the forested area of Linjiang's eastern suburb, the night continued under the moonlight. Shen Jiami approached, worried about the operation, but the strategist replied that she had found something worthy of attention. Soon, the leader explained that up until 2 hours ago, the plan had been working perfectly, with the horde moving south. She then pointed to the map, showing that small hordes in the east were gathering unusually toward the mountains. The device displayed a large red alert over the area where the strategy was failing. Suddenly, Midiu arrived, breathless, with a report from the mountain team, prompting the commander to question the situation. The young woman revealed that they had encountered the hybrid clan, leaving everyone completely shocked by the news. Not understanding the term, the other warriors listened as the hooded man explained it was their own designation. He reminded them of the ghouls to begin his explanation of the new threat. The warrior clarified that when mutants of that level gained power and intelligence, they formed tribes and were called hybrids. The explanation concluded that some hybrids evolved monsters into a personal guard, meaning they would face an enhanced army. With that, the others realized the situation was far more dangerous than a simple beast tide. The warrior with cybernetic parts stepped closer to the leader and asked what the next step would be. He then reminded her that everyone had placed their trust in her, and that now she needed to take responsibility and give the order. With no other choice, the strategist only questioned what else could be done in the face of the new reality. With her eyes fixed on the horizon, she decided the only option was to go there and deal with the problem directly. In the mountains, the lone sniper continued to monitor the area. Suddenly, a hand reached toward him. The warrior was startled as he was touched on the shoulder by surprise. Turning around, he found Shenjian and asked about the current situation. Still shaken, the man asked her not to appear like that, and the leader apologized before questioning where the hybrid clan was. Regaining his composure, he pointed and informed her that the threat was about 2 kilometers away. Soon, the other team members arrived and spotted the creature in the distance. Before them, a massive monster walked through the forest with its followers. The creature revealed itself as a hybrid with huge tusks and a robust body. Immediately, the monster opened its mouth and let out a thunderous roar. Shenjian then asked the sniper how many people they had, and he estimated about 50 fighters. The cyborg warrior questioned her about the plan, and she explained that they needed to eliminate the hybrid to unite the eastern forces with the main battlefield. Concluding the strategy, the commander ordered them to strike first to reduce the number of guards and retreat if the horde approached. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.